What happens when a country bumpkin princess gets tossed into a ruthless royal battle royale just to avoid wearing a suffocating corset? Most fairy tales promise you a dream wedding at the end of the rainbow, but for Princess Rita, walking down that holy aisle might actually be her worst nightmare. Yeah, sure, every story claims to wrap up with everyone living happily ever after under the divine light. But when you're forced to compete against 30 hyper-competitive noblewomen for the crown of the continent's scariest empire, that peaceful altar looks more like an execution block. Looking back at all those faceless nobles dressed in fancy gowns, it's clear nobody ever asks what happens after the grand ceremony ends. Host commentary. Look at these background nobles, folks. The artist didn't even bother giving them eyes or noses. That's standard Manhwa budget saving right there. Even as a little girl, Rita always despised those wrapped-up happy endings. She knew life doesn't just stop when the curtain falls. There's always tomorrow to deal with. The legendary sovereign stands in all his majesty, draped in velvet and gold. But behind all that terrifying imperial authority lies a story that's only just beginning to unfold. White doves flutter through the air as the truth settles in. Once the fairy tale ends, real life actually begins, complete with all its messy chaos and unexpected twists. A whole gallery of glamorous ladies from across the land, each one groomed to perfection for a royal destiny. Seriously, if I had to sit through another tea party with 30 girls competing for one guy, I'd run straight back to the stables. Bright light bursts through the massive ornate arches of the palace entrance. Rita knows that whatever is happening right now is just chapter 1 of her real journey. Dressed in a breathtaking embroidered gown adorned with glittering jewels and a radiant tiara, Rita gazes forward with calm determination. With 4 handmaids carrying her massive glowing white train, she glides across the polished marble floor, fully owning every step she takes. She didn't march down this path to satisfy royal expectations or fulfill ancient prophecies. She took this leap entirely on her own terms. Stepping down the stairs, the emperor moves toward her with grand, sweeping authority in his magnificent fur-lined cloak. He extends a gloved hand toward her, making a silent invitation that changes everything between them.
With golden petals drifting softly around her, Princess Rita looks up, her bright amber eyes filled with unwavering purpose.
Wow, check out the fine embroidery detail on that dress. The artist really pulled out all the stops to make her look like absolute royalty here. Their hands meet softly over a bed of blooming white roses, sealing a silent vow as two worlds collide. Rewinding back to where this madness all started in the peaceful little agricultural kingdom of Allendal, an out-of-breath court servant goes sprinting down the dirt path, shouting out for the princess at the top of his lungs. He frantically pokes his head into the barn stalls, desperately searching everywhere through the hay while the horses casually watch him panic. One of the horses just stares back with total calm, clearly knowing where its favorite human is hiding out. While everyone in the castle is losing their minds, our main character, Princess Rita, is literally taking a cozy afternoon nap right in the straw. Talk about relatable. The horse gently nuzzles her face with its wet nose, causing Rita to squirm and chuckle in her sleep. Stop it, Alec, mumble, she groans, thinking her favorite horse is just playing around. The servant pops over the stall barrier. Oh, there you are, Princess Rita. A messenger from the Empire has just arrived. He drops the biggest bombshell imaginable, yelling that she's being called away to get married. Rita rubs her sleepy eyes in complete confusion. Cut to the main parlor of Allendal Castle. The king and queen are sitting on the couch in complete despair, groans over what on earth they're supposed to do. Her mother clutches her forehead in total agony, lamenting that sweet, wild Rita could never survive in a cutthroat place like the Empire. Meanwhile, Rita just sits there smiling like everything is completely fine. The queen starts panicking hard, screaming that the Empire's power and history are on a whole different dimension. Her husband's sweat drops, trembling nervously, admitting they can't just refuse an imperial decree without starting a war. Ah, yes, the classic royal family strategy. Eldest daughter Louise, second daughter Marie, and third daughter Elle were all married off already, so poor fourth daughter Rita is the last sacrificial lamb on the menu. Seeing her parents lose their minds, Rita cheerfully waves her hand and tries to lighten the mood, saying she was bound to get married sooner or later anyway. How can you be so carefree? Her mother roars with sharp anime shark teeth. Do you really think you can handle etiquette, political diplomacy, and worst of all, wearing a suffocating corset every single day? Rita's head goes spinning in dazed, dizzy circles. Eek, she gasps as her mother drops the final deal breaker. If she leaves for the Empire, she'll have to abandon her beloved horse Alec. Can't ride Alec anymore? Rita squeals in pure terror. Forget imperial politics or scary nobles. Losing her horseback rides in the open fields is where she draws the absolute line. Look at her dramatic face change. She was completely calm until her horse got brought into the equation. Now it's personal. Her dad gives a bittersweet, gentle smile, confessing that since Rita is the most tomboyish of all the daughters, they wanted to keep her close to home so the castle wouldn't feel so lonely. Hearing her father's genuine warmth, Rita's amber eyes widen as a wave of affection washes over her. Looking at the massive map of the Gaozer Empire, Rita rubs her temples in sheer frustration. How is a simple farm princess from a tiny country supposed to rule the greatest empire on the continent? But then, she remembers her older sisters. They all did their duty and settled happily into their new lives after marriage. Realizing it's now her responsibility to step up for her family, Rita pumps herself up, determined to do her absolute best no matter what lies ahead. Turning back to her anxious parents, she takes a deep breath and prepares to give them her final answer. She bursts into a dazzling, reassuring smile. I'll be totally fine, probably, so please don't worry and send me off with a smile. Probably fine is definitely not the phrase you want to hear right before sending your daughter to a snake pit of imperial politics, but okay. Her mother lets out a long, heavy breath. All right. However, Rita, this is no ordinary marriage proposal. Rita tilts her head in total mystery, curious about what trick is hidden in the fine print. Flash forward to her arrival at the Gaozer Empire. The sheer grandeur of the inner palace leaves her completely stunned. Clasping her hands together in simple traveling attire, Rita lets out an amazed breath. Wow! As the magnificent architecture unfolds before her eyes. The massive inner palace hall is packed with dozens of stunning princesses sipping tea in high-end luxury, gossiping under towering crystal chandeliers and marble fountains. Standing next to her elderly maid, Rita stares around with wide eyes, overwhelmed by how dazzling and glamorous every single lady appears. Suddenly, high-ranking temple priests dressed in pristine white robes step into the center of the hall to command everyone's attention. Princesses, thank you all for gathering today under the guidance of God Atra, the head priest announces gravely. From this moment on, all 30 princesses present will spend the next month participating in the official selection process for the next Empress, as decreed by the Holy Oracle. Host commentary, a 1-month Empress survival tournament with 30 foreign princesses? Now that is a reality show I'd watch. While every other princess looks stressed, Rita breaks into a sneaky, super satisfied grin. Hee, this is exactly what Mother warned me about beforehand. Her internal plan is absolute genius. If she just slacks off and stays completely low profile for 30 days, one of these gorgeous, hyper-ambitious ladies will win the crown, and she gets to go straight back home to write Alec. She walks down the hallway with a cheeky grin, completely confident that being a total loser is her fast ticket back to freedom. Stepping into her temporary palace quarters, Princess Rita turns around to talk to her assigned maid, but the woman just stands there with a completely stone-cold, expressionless stare. Talk about top-tier customer service. This maid looks like she'd rather be anywhere else in the entire world. Unbothered by the chilly reception, Rita gasps in sheer delight, amazed, as she takes in the breathtaking room with its golden wallpaper and glittering chandeliers. She gleefully exclaims how magnificent everything looks, while her maid quietly repeats the word under her breath in total skepticism. Catching the strange tone in her voice, Rita tilts her head and asks what she meant. The stoic maid immediately backtracks with a stiff posture, murmuring that it was nothing at all. Crossing her hand over her chest in a crisp, military-style bow, the woman formally introduces herself as Rita's official head lady-in-waiting, offering her full services alongside 2 assistant maids. Rita smiles brightly and politely thanks her, explaining that she already brought her sweet old nanny from home to handle all her personal needs. Without missing a beat, the head maid drops a massive bomb, announcing that her nanny was already packed up and shipped right back to Allendale. What? Rita shrieks, her jaw practically hitting the polished floorboards in absolute disbelief. The maid calmly explains that while Rita is allowed to keep her personal belongings, the imperial rules strictly mandate that only exclusive palace staff can attend to candidates during the selection month. Tearful chibi tears spurt from Rita's eyes, crying as she already begins missing her nanny's comforting presence. Meanwhile, the unbothered maid reminds her that the high priest literally explained all of this during the grand orientation speech. Host commentary, because who actually listens listens to orientation speeches when there's free food and sparkly chandeliers to stare at. Sweating bullets, Rita freezes with wide eyes as she inwardly realizes that she didn't listen to a single word the priest was rambling about earlier. A sudden horrific thought strikes her mind. Trembling with worry, she asks if her beloved horse, Alec, was also sent packing back to the farm, while the maid casually holds a basin of warm water. Relieved beyond words, Rita dashes straight to the imperial stables and wraps her arms around her trusty brown horse, overjoyed that he was allowed to stay in the palace. Draped in a dark hooded cloak, she strokes Alec's muzzle and whispers that, without her nanny around, she'll have to sneak out under the cover of night to visit him, even if dodging the guards won't be easy. Host commentary. Sighs. Sneaking out of an imperial fortress just to cuddle a horse is peak tomboy princess energy. Out of nowhere, Alec opens his mouth wide and lets out an outrageously loud neigh that reverberates through the entire barn, catching Rita completely off guard. Bursting into laughter, giggles, Rita squeezes her horse tight, thanking him for putting a massive smile back on her face when she needed it most. Suddenly, heavy footsteps ring out near the entrance. Rita's ears perk up as she turns toward the doorway, spotting the towering silhouette of a mysterious man framed against the golden sunset. A strikingly handsome dark-haired nobleman in an exquisite velvet coat steps into the light. Gazing at Alec, he murmurs softly to himself, noticing the rustic horse brought in by the candidate from Allendale. Dropping low to the ground, Rita hides behind a stack of fresh straw, peeking through the grass with wide amber eyes, curious as she wonders who on earth this impeccably dressed stranger could be. The noble extends an elegant, gloved hand toward the horse's stall, moving with effortless grace and aristocratic poise. Host commentary. Look at the hand detail in this panel. The artist knew exactly what they were doing with those long, slender fingers. Complimenting Alec's shiny coat, he gently reaches out to pet him. But Alec instantly, violently shakes his head back with a loud snort, completely rejecting the high and mighty stranger. Instead of getting annoyed, the dark-haired man lets out a charming, amused chuckle, finding the feisty horse thoroughly entertaining before strolling out into the moonlit palace garden. Back in her royal bedroom, Rita plops down onto her lush bed in her nightgown, exhausted from the long day while plotting out how to map the guard patrol routes so she can keep visiting Alec undetected. Staring up at the ceiling, she can't help but picture the mysterious, handsome man from the stables, pondering curious that, given his lavish attire, he must hold massive influence in the imperial court. Resting her head against the soft pillow, a gentle wave of melancholy hits her as she reflects on how little she actually knows about the complex empire she just moved to. Thoughts of the grand palace halls and all 30 glamorous princesses drift through her mind, filling her with wonder at a world of high luxury she never imagined entering. Squirming with excitement under her blankets, her tomboy optimism kicks right back in. She decides that meeting so many girls her own age is an awesome opportunity to make lifelong friends during her stay. Host commentary. Oh, sweet, innocent Rita, thinking a cutthroat Empress battle is a friendly sleepover camp. She's in for a wild awakening tomorrow. With a happy chuckle, she closes her eyes under the starlit sky, drifting off into a peaceful sleep without a single care in the world. Fast forward to the very next morning, drenched. Rita stands completely soaked from head to toe, dripping with water as an outrageous shriek erupts across the hall. A massive splash of ice-cold water hits the floor with a heavy thud, echoing through the marble corridor. Standing there drenched like a drowned rat, Rita blinks in utter confusion while an arrogant red-haired princess holds a cup nearby and a sweet blue-haired girl gasps in total horror at the scene. Rewinding back just a few minutes earlier, Rita was casually strolling down the pristine palace corridor alongside her maid, heading toward the main hall after finishing a huge breakfast. Dozens of elite noblewomen from across the continent were gathered in clusters, sipping tea and gossiping among themselves under the towering glass windows. Hearing about the crowd, the maid offhandedly mentions that historically, up to 100 candidate princesses have lived in the inner palace at once. 100? Rita squeaks, her eyes bulging out in pure shock. Host commentary. Imagine managing a palace with 100 dramatic princesses fighting for one guy. The emperor's budget for drama must be infinite. Looking down at her simple traditional dress, Rita keeps chatting with her maid as they navigate through the vast gilded hallway. Smiling brightly, Rita gushes about how amazing the empire's breakfast was, admitting she stuffed her face with fancy pastries, croissants, and fresh salad the second she woke up. Cupping her warm cheeks in bliss, she boasts that the homemade bread back in Allendale is still superior because their local wheat makes the baked goods super sweet and fluffy. Overhearing her adorable country girl pride, a soft, polite giggle echoes from right behind her. Realizing she laughed out loud, a timid blue-haired princess flushes bright red and frantically apologizes for interrupting her conversation. Gazing at Rita with gentle ruby eyes, the sweet girl shyly admits she only laughed because Rita looked so genuinely radiant and happy while talking about her home country's food. Thrilled to find a friendly listener, Rita beams with pride, bragging about her nanny's famous milk cream pies that taste like pure heaven on earth. The soft-spoken princess tilted her head, her eyes sparkling with innocent curiosity, as she admitted milk cream pie sounded absolutely mouth-watering. But as the words left her lips, her expression suddenly wobbled, and big glistening tears began welling up in her eyes. Suddenly, full-blown comedic waterfalls erupt from her eyes. Panic shoots through Rita as she frantically waves her hands, shouting out to ask what on earth went wrong. Host commentary: she went from discussing bakery pies to a tragic breakdown in 0.5 seconds flat. Clutching her elegant blue gown, the poor girl sobs uncontrollably, confessing that hearing about home made her overcome with severe, agonizing homesickness. Softening her voice, Rita steps forward and places a comforting hand near her shoulder, reassuring her with heartfelt warmth that she completely gets how hard it is to be away from home. Handing over a crisp lace handkerchief, Rita bursts into a bright, cheerful grin, cheering her up by admitting that she misses home so much she even misses the smelly horse stables. Sniffling softly, the girl wipes her tears with the handkerchief and lets out a sweet, relieved smile, gently asking for Rita's name. Just as Rita opens her mouth to introduce herself, sharp high heels click against the floor. A haughty red-haired princess struts over, cutting in with a nasty sneer to mock her tiny homeland. Waving her lace fan with snobbish disgust, the villainous redhead snarls that only a clueless hillbilly from Allendale could wear such a tacky, outdated dress in front of imperial royalty without dying of shame. Host commentary: oh, look, the classic mean girl villain has arrived right on schedule. Standard Manhwa etiquette requires every event to have at least one bully in a giant frilly dress. Leaning in uncomfortably close, the arrogant bully shifts her sharp gaze to the blue-haired girl, mockingly asking if she's the plain, pathetic Princess Cordelia from the Principality of Celity. Seeing her new friend getting humiliated, Rita steps right between them with a cool, unbothered smile, stepping up to put this arrogant bully right in her place. Rita turns around with a dazzling, unfazed smile, completely neutralizing the intense atmosphere, while Fauna stammers in utter disbelief, flustered, as her petty insult completely falls flat. Without giving her a single second to recover, Rita leans in uncomfortably close with a giant grin, enthusiastically thanking the mean girl for introducing herself. Host commentary: Rita's tactic of kill him with kindness is so absurdly aggressive that the bully doesn't even know how to react. Beaming with bright energy, Rita introduces herself as Rita Allendale and cheerfully asks for the redhead's name while complimenting her frilly dress, which causes Fauna's head to practically explode in sheer annoyance. Sighing softly with a hand over her chest, Rita candidly confesses to the room that she doesn't know a single thing about imperial rituals or court politics, feeling pretty lost in this huge palace. Spinning around with open arms, Rita enthusiastically proposes that everyone just become best friends, offering her hand to Cordelia, Fiona, and every other princess within earshot. Host commentary: Manhwa protagonists either want total revenge or want to turn a ruthless royal survival contest into a friendly sleepover. There is zero middle ground. Flustered by the warm gesture, the timid blue-haired girl blushes softly and shyly introduces herself as Cordelia, the 10th princess from the Principality of Celity. Rita's face lights up with joy as she warmly greets Princess Cordelia, completely ignoring Fauna in the background, who crosses her arms and lets out a haughty snort. Striking a pompous pose with her lace fan, the redhead proudly declares her high and mighty status as Fauna Linden from the prestigious Linden ducal family. Sneering down her nose, Fauna dismisses the idea of friendship, scoffing that the lowest-ranked country princess and a 29th-ranked noble make a pitifully perfect match. Host commentary: ah, yes, because nothing says peak aristocracy like obsessing over high school lunch table rankings in front of 50 people. A total blank, clueless expression washes over Rita's face as giant floating question marks appear above her head, completely lost as to what rankings even mean. Noticing her total ignorance, Fauna smirks behind her fan mischievously, mocking Rita for bragging earlier about not knowing a single rule about the empire. Throwing her arms out dramatically with an arrogant chuckle, Fauna condescendingly announces that since she's so exceptionally generous, she'll explain the palace hierarchy to them. She explains that all 30 candidates are strictly ranked based on their nation's wealth and bloodline status, which directly determines how luxurious their assigned quarters are. Look at all these detailed framed portraits in the background. The webtoon artist really spent hours drawing 30 distinct princess designs just for a brief explanation panel. Leaning in with a nasty sneer, Fauna asks if the walk from their trashy, distant annexes was exhausting, bragging that a delicate lady like herself could never handle walking that far. Rita casually shrugs it off, mentioning that walking is nothing to her since she trains by riding horses every single day back home, leaving Cordelia absolutely amazed by her athleticism. Seeing Cordelia's eyes sparkle, Rita cheerfully invites her to go horseback riding together, while Fauna's face twists into a furious, vein-popping scowl. Losing her cool completely, Fauna shrieks at the top of her lungs, screaming that high-born noble ladies would never demean themselves by riding dirty animals. Host commentary: imagine getting this unhinged just because someone mentioned loving horses. Fauna's blood pressure must be through the roof. Dramatic anger fumes surround Fauna as she aggressively points her fan at Cordelia, dramatic crying voice yelling, declaring that Cordelia's noble father would weep in shame if he saw her entertaining such low-class farm talk. She continues her bitter rant, sneering that since Rita comes from a backwoods kingdom, her family probably rides horses only because they're too broke to hire actual servants. In the background, snobbish noblewomen cover their mouths with fancy lace fans, giggling quietly as they gossip about the country princess. Cordelia hangs her head in deep shame, holding back tears as the cruel insults crush her spirit, while Rita quietly observes her friend's distress. Breaking the heavy silence, Rita steps forward with a firm, sharp glare, speaking up in a low tone that instantly cuts off Fauna's laughter. Looking directly into the bully's eyes, Rita politely yet firmly asks Fauna to keep her mouth shut and stop hurling nasty insults at Princess Cordelia. Taken aback by the sudden pushback, Fauna stammers out a shocked reaction, thoroughly stunned that a country girl dared to stand up to her. Host commentary: yes, queen energy right here. Rita does not mess around when her friends get picked on. With a bright, fearless grin, Rita adds that Cordelia looks deeply hurt, but as for herself, she couldn't care less about Fauna's childish insults. Rita strikes a proud pose, loudly inviting the redhead to fire all the mean comments she wants directly at her, completely unbothered. Meanwhile, a maid carrying a tray of iced drinks walks past. Enraged beyond reason, Fauna completely snaps. She grabs a tall glass of icy liquid off the tray and violently hurls it right into Rita's face. Ice-cold water splashes everywhere as Rita gets drenched from head to toe. Cordelia gasps in absolute horror, slapping her hands over her mouth. Shaking her fan with a malicious smirk, Fauna nastily snaps that Rita smells like cheap, dirty straw, mockingly asking if rotten hay is our country's proudest local export. A heavy dark text box frames the brutal humiliation, crowning Rita with the cruel nickname, Straw Princess. Water drips continuously from Rita's golden hair onto her soaked dress, while she stands in total silence with a blank expression. Host commentary: throwing a drink over someone's head at a formal imperial reception is peak soap opera villain behavior. Fauna is begging for a karma slap. Suddenly, Rita bursts into a bright, angelic smile, giggles, cheerfully wiping the water off her face and laughing that fresh straw actually smells pretty nice. Fauna stares in utter defeat, realizing Rita's optimism is completely unbreakable. Cordelia rushes over with deep concern, trembling, asking if she's all right, but Rita smiles brightly, reassuring her that she's totally fine, while the maid quickly guides her away to change. Laughing off the splash, Rita follows the maid up the grand marble staircase to get dry clothes, completely unaware of a tall, dark silhouette watching her every move from above. High up on the grand balcony, a mysterious figure wrapped in a long, dark cloak stands in the shadows, quietly gazing down at the spirited blonde princess. Host commentary: ooh, who is this mysterious watcher stalking from the upper levels? You just know it's a major male lead keeping tabs on her. A short while later, Rita returns to the ballroom wearing a magnificent emerald green gown. Cordelia shyly approaches her, flustered, thanking her profusely for standing up for her earlier and asking if they can stick together. Clapping her gloved hands in pure excitement, Rita happily accepts, exclaiming that having a friend nearby will definitely help her stay calm when the Empress and Princes arrive. Cordelia fidgets nervously in her blue dress, trembling, admitting her heart is racing as she timidly tries to say something else to Rita. Blushing sweetly, Cordelia shyly asks Rita to call her Cordy, since that's what her closest friends call her, prompting Rita to warmly grasp her hands in pure joy. Right as they exchange nicknames, a loud, majestic announcement echoes across the entire high-ceiling hall, drawing everyone's immediate attention. The massive grand doors swing open, and the current Empress of the Empire struts down the staircase, laughing dramatically behind her fluffy fur fan. Dressed in a lavish golden gown, Empress Eliza Reptor Gowser spreads her arms wide, dramatically welcoming her little songbirds and wondering aloud who among them will win the crown in 1 month's time. Host commentary. The Empress is giving major theatrical villain energy with that giant fur fan. She's treating this high-stakes political marriage like her personal reality TV show. Cordelia leans in close, whispers, quietly informing Rita that Empress Eliza is the mother of the third prince, before pointing toward the drop-dead gorgeous blonde prince standing beside her, First Prince Sovan. Title card introduces First Prince Sovan Edel Gausier as the Empress continues her extravagant speech, declaring that the chosen maiden shall bring 1,000 years of joy to the empire. Wiping a dramatic fake tear, the Empress laments her own tragic youth, while Prince Sovan smoothly comforts her with a charismatic smile, charming the entire audience. As Rita glances over at the Imperial lineup, her eyes suddenly widen in pure shock as she catches sight of a stunning dark-haired nobleman standing right next to Prince Sova, the exact same stranger from the stables. Panicking slightly, Rita tugs on her friend's sleeve, frantically asking Cordy if she knows the identity of the dark-haired man standing near Prince Sovan. A regal title banner appears on screen, formally identifying the sharp-eyed nobleman, Second Prince Will Tret Gausier. I knew it! The guy petting horses in the dark barn last night was literally the second prince. Talk about a classic romance webtoon setup. An exquisite full-panel portrait showcases Prince Will in his high-collared navy uniform, looking incredibly dashing with dark hair and sharp, mysterious eyes. Cordelia begins to whisper a secretive warning about Prince Will's dangerous reputation, but she's cut off as the High Priest strikes his sacred bell staff, announcing the formal introduction of all candidate princesses. The Grand High Priest steps forward with his sacred staff, raising his solemn voice to announce the very first candidate, Lady Charlotte Thrice, the second princess of the Kingdom of Thrice, who gracefully acknowledges her name with a soft bow. Gazing up at the ethereal, silver-haired noblewoman, Rita's jaw completely drops in awe, amazed as she gapes at Charlotte's exquisite beauty and regal presence. As Charlotte glides up the crimson-carpeted grand staircase toward the imperial family, quiet whispers echo across the hall, confirming that she holds the coveted #1 ranking and is the overwhelming favorite to become the next Empress. Host commentary? #1 candidate walking up like she already owns the palace. You can practically smell the main rival energy radiating off her dress. Panic instantly sets in as a cold sweat breaks out across Rita's face, turning to Cordelia in sheer terror when she realizes every single candidate is expected to deliver a public introduction. Cordelia can only stare in disbelief as Rita desperately scrambles inside her head, trying to figure out if listing her favorite foods and random hobbies is acceptable for an Imperial High Society presentation. Before she can even form a coherent plan, the High Priest's booming voice calls out the final princess on the list, Lady Rita Allendal. Host commentary. Talk about zero prep time. Rita's getting pushed onto the world stage with literally 2 seconds of mental prep. Walking up to the grand stairs with a flustered squeak, Rita turns toward the intimidating audience of 50 glitzy noblewomen, trying her best to put on a brave front as Fauna sneers maliciously in the background. Completely panicking under the pressure, Rita blurts out at maximum volume that her main hobby is galloping on horses, she adores her nanny's homemade milk cream pie, and she absolutely positively loves horses above all else. An agonizingly awkward, dead silence fills the entire ballroom, leaving poor Rita sweating bullets with dark gloom lines over her face as she mentally begs her parents for forgiveness. Host commentary? She really just gave a 5th grade show and tell presentation to the highest imperial nobility. You gotta respect the unhinged honesty. As she shamefully slinks back into the crowd, a subtle, captivating smile catches her eye. Second Prince Will Tret Gausier is quietly watching her with intrigued, gentle eyes. While Empress Eliza hides her unimpressed expression behind her fluffy brown fan, Rita and Cordelia collapse into a quiet alcove near the blue flowers, exhaling massive sighs of relief after surviving the public trial. Suddenly, a dazzling golden light fills the corridor as First Prince Sovin steps out from the shadows, extending a gloved hand with a glowing smile to personally ask Rita for a private conversation. Host commentary: the First Prince himself swooping in right after her epic horse speech? Talk about an unexpected turn of events. Rita and Cordelia freeze in total bewilderment, looking up at the drop-dead gorgeous golden-haired royal as he softly repeats his invitation to speak with her. High up on the grand balcony, Charlotte the Race gazes down with sharp, unreadable eyes, silently observing Prince Sovin approaching the country princess. With glowing flowers blooming behind him, Prince Sovin flashes his signature charismatic grin, reaffirming his request to spend time alone with Princess Rita. Cordelia's eyes widen to the size of saucers, slapping her gloved hands over her mouth in absolute shock at the sheer honor being bestowed upon her friend. Host commentary: Cordelia's facial expression is all of us right now. Her bestie just got pulled by the top-tier bachelor in 3 seconds flat. Quick on her feet, Cordelia gives Rita an aggressive whisper push, frantically urging her to seize this golden opportunity and talk to the prince immediately. Swept up in the excitement, Cordelia curtsies gracefully toward Prince Sivan, excusing herself with a polite bow so the two can be left alone. Chibi Cordelia gives a cheeky wink and a wave, wishing Rita the best of luck, as Chibi Rita's soul practically leaves her body in sheer panic. Reaching out a helpless hand as Cordelia vanishes into the sea of guests, Rita stands completely abandoned, her heart pounding wildly inside her chest. Host commentary: Cordelia said, "I am a true friend, but I am not cock-blocking the first prince," and vanished like a ninja. Prince Sovin offers a serene, comforting smile, patiently waiting for Rita to gather her thoughts under the starry night sky. Sitting across from each other in a gorgeous glass gazebo under the full moon, Rita clutches her hands together in sheer agony, wondering on earth what she's supposed to discuss with an imperial prince. A regal banner formally introduces the charismatic royal, Prince Sovin, the first prince of the Gaussier Empire. Staring across the table at his sculpted features and silky golden hair, Rita can't help but gush internally, amazed at how insanely attractive he looks up close. As she glances closer at his face, her breath catches in her throat upon noticing his breathtaking eyes, which sparkle like multicolored rainbow jewels under the moonlight. Host commentary: look at those anime eyes. The artist threw the whole color palette into his irises. Breaking the silence with smooth elegance, Prince Sovin apologizes for interrupting her chat with the Princess of Celody, casually commenting on how gorgeous the night air feels. Rita nods along nervously while her brain spirals out of control, worrying that if they accidentally hit it off, she'll get forced into becoming Empress and lose her beloved horse-riding freedom forever. Chibi Rita snort laughs, desperately tries to suppress her chaotic thoughts, repeatedly reminding herself to stay polite and avoid embarrassing her kingdom any further. Turning his head slightly with a playful glint in his eye, Prince Sovin drops his voice into a low, intriguing tone as he prepares to drop a bombshell confession. With a smooth smile, Prince Sovin reveals that word has already spread about her arriving at the imperial palace on horseback, slyly teasing her about the royal rumors. Host commentary: news travels fast in the Empire. The horse princess tag is officially permanent. Sweat pouring down her neck, flustered, Rita frantically clarifies that she wasn't riding alone and had her nanny with her, reluctantly admitting that her horse's name is Alec. Remembering her mother's strict warnings against talking about dirty animals, Rita tries to shut down the topic, but Sovin leans in with a sparkling grin, admitting he's terrible at riding and asking if she could give him personal tips. Giggle. Hearing the word tips triggers an instant explosion in Rita's mind as giant literal horse reflections light up inside her golden eyes like fiery torches. Completely forgetting all decorum, Rita bursts into an ecstatic, hand-waving monologue about horse care, while Sovin watches her animated rambling with absolute fond delight. Host commentary: he literally used the ultimate horse bait, and she took it hook, line, and sinker. Sovin knows exactly how to handle her. Suddenly, a breathtaking, dark-skinned princess draped in a shimmering starry gown strides toward the gazebo with an aura of pure elegance. A magnificent floral frame introduces the stunning newcomer, Levue Lot, 5th princess of the Kingdom of Lot, ranked 3rd among all candidates. Gliding into the gazebo with a sultry smirk, mocking tone, Princess Levieu charmingly asks if she can join their private rendezvous and chat with Prince Sovan as well. Seeing a potential escape hatch, Chibi Rita lets out a joyful sigh of relief, thanking the heavens that this intense one-on-one session is finally getting interrupted. Host commentary: most girls would be devastated by a rival interrupting, but Rita is treating Levieu like a literal savior sending a rescue boat. Without missing a single beat, Prince Sovan sits tall and bluntly cuts Levieu down, politely stating that he is currently in the middle of a private conversation with Princess Rita. Gasping in visible shock behind her decorative fan, Princess Levieu scoffs that showing exclusive favoritism to a single low-ranked princess on the very first night is highly improper. Closing his eyes with unwavering authority, Prince Sovan firmly declares that it is his explicit intention to dedicate his entire evening exclusively to Rita. With a cold dismissal gesture, Sovan smoothly suggests that Levieu go entertain herself with the other two princes scattered around the hall instead. Host commentary: gasp, savage rejection. Prince Sovan just hit her with the ultimate go bother my brother shield. As Princess Levieu stands frozen in pure humiliation with dark anger shadows over her face, breathless, Rita senses the explosive tension and nervously raises her hand to offer a compromise. Prince Sovan tilts his head in curiosity, looking at Rita with a confused question mark, as the dark-skinned princess glares behind him. With a bright, innocent smile, Rita proposes that since every single princess wants time with the royals, they should set strict time limits and hold organized small group discussions. Princess Levieu and the surrounding noblewomen freeze in total bewilderment, staring at Rita like she just dropped an alien concept into imperial court etiquette. Host commentary: did Rita just turn a romantic harem competition into a structured speed dating seminar? Passionately holding up her fingers, Rita breaks down the logical math. 30 princesses divided evenly among 3 princes means exactly 10 girls per prince in rotating study groups. A full overview of the Grand Hall shows the 30 colorful candidates organized neatly around the 3 princes, ensuring every nation gets a fair and equal chance to converse. Beaming with pride over her brilliant diplomatic strategy, Rita throws her arms out wide, while Prince Sovan stares at her completely stunned and utterly speechless. Covering his mouth as he bursts into a warm, heartfelt laugh, Prince Sovan gazes at her with deep admiration, praising her for being so genuinely kind and considerate to everyone without an ounce of discrimination. Host commentary: look at that gentle blush! Rita's selfless logic just completely stole the first prince's heart without her even trying. Prince Sovan gives a smooth, approving nod as Rita's group discussion plan is immediately put into action. Scanning the surrounding corridor with a refined glint in his eye, he casually mentions gathering the first group of 10 nearby princesses to start the rotation. Turning around with effortless charm, Prince Sovan raises his gloved hand and warmly invites the surrounding noblewomen to gather close. The crowd of hopeful candidates instantly erupts into delighted gasps and flattered murmurs, eagerly flocking toward the golden-haired prince. Standing near the edge of the gazebo, Princess Levieu crosses her arms in silent frustration, glaring bitterly at the ongoing spectacle. Meanwhile, Rita catches her dark gaze and offers a polite, subdued expression, feeling the heavy aura radiating off the snobbish noblewoman. Host commentary: Levieu thought she was about to secure a private romantic date, and now she's forced to join a group study hall. Her ego is severely bruised right now. As the princesses rush forward to secure their spots, Rita watches Prince Sovan from a distance, recalling his gentle compliment about her kindness. She clasps her hands together and realizes that since every other lady is desperate for royal attention, her structured proposal gave them all a fair chance to shine, which works out perfectly for her since she has zero desire to be chosen anyway. Meanwhile, deep within the inner chambers of the imperial palace, an exquisite arrangement of pink peonies and pearls rest on a golden table under a heavy, suffocating silence. A low, bitter sigh echoes through the room as a shadowy voice mutters about how utterly unpleasant everything has become. Shadows pool dramatically across the opulent parlor as Empress Eliza grips her feather fan, letting out a furious, trembling growl. Her eyes glow with venomous wrath as the horrifying realization sinks in that her absolute control over the court is slipping. Losing her composure completely, Empress Eliza hurls her fluffy brown fan across the room with an enraged scream, collapsing back against her velvet sofa in sheer fury. Her personal maids tremble in horror, bowing their heads low to avoid becoming the target of her unpredictable rage. Host commentary. Look at that total temper tantrum. The Empress is throwing her expensive accessories around like a toddler who didn't get her nap. Glaring at her trembling court priest and staff, Empress Eliza screeches at the top of her lungs, questioning what the temple elders meant by promising 1,000 years of peace under a new ruler. She violently slams her hand on the armrest, refusing to accept any prophecy that doesn't name her as the ultimate supreme ruler of the empire. A terrifying, unhinged grin twists across Empress Eliza's face as black shadow lines engulf her silhouette. With wild, bloodshot eyes, she screams into the air that she is the only lovely, desirable ruler the empire will ever need, insisting that the throne belongs exclusively to her. Sweating profusely from every pore, the court priest stammers out a hesitant response, feebly attempting to explain the Holy Scriptures without angering the unhinged monarch. Empress Eliza immediately cuts him off with a sweet, deadly smile, leaning forward as her purple eyes narrow into razor-sharp slits. Mocking tone, she softly prompts him to finish his sentence, daring him to utter another word of contradiction. Host commentary. Whispers, oh boy, when a villain drops their voice and smiles like that, you know somebody's lifespan just got cut down to 30 seconds. Shaking like a leaf, the priest stammers out a pathetic apology, begging for her forgiveness. Empress Eliza lets out a high-pitched, sinister giggle, mockingly repeating his desperate apology back to him with chilling condescension. Raising two slender fingers into the air with terrifying elegance, Empress Eliza coldly pronounces the official charge against the priest and the maid standing beside him. Lèse-majesty, the ultimate crime of disrespecting royal authority. The terrified maid gasps in absolute shock, crying out in terror as she begs to know what she did wrong, while the priest drops to his knees pleading for mercy. Empress Eliza simply covers her ears and scoffs, complaining about how vulgar and noisy common servants are when they scream. Host commentary. The maid didn't even open her mouth and still got slapped with treason charges. Talk about working for the absolute worst boss in the universe. Both servants collapse onto the carpet, weeping hysterically as cold sweat drips off their pale faces under the Empress's icy, unmoving gaze. Wiggling her pointed finger in a playful, casual motion, Empress Eliza delivers her final, merciless judgment with a cheerful smile, ordering the palace guards to take both servants away and execute them by beheading immediately. Heavy-armed guards grab the screaming servants by their collars and drag them out of the royal suite. The priest's desperate cries for mercy fade down the hallway until the heavy golden double doors slam shut with a thunderous bang. Reclining lazily on her silk couch, Empress Eliza lets out a soft, dramatic sigh, casually remarking on how irritating it is that such trivial matters upset her elegance. She casually brushes off the horrific execution, reiterating her absolute disgust for anyone who dares question her divine majesty. Host commentary. She literally just sentenced 2 innocent people to death and treated it like brushing a piece of lint off her dress. Eliza is pure, unadulterated evil. Standing near the doorway, the remaining palace attendants bow their heads in terrified unison, trembling as they hastily agree with every word coming out of the Empress's mouth to save their own necks. Suddenly, the tall entrance doors creak open, revealing Second Prince Will Tret-Gosser standing in the bright doorway, swathed in an intricate dark blue military uniform with gold embroidery. Empress Eliza's face brightens instantly as she welcomes her dark-haired stepson, referring to him with sinister affection as her sweet little doll. Walking into the center of the grand chamber with a completely emotionless expression, Prince Will bows his head deeply, respectfully asking if the Empress summoned him for an urgent matter. Flashing an overly affectionate, theatrical smile, Empress Eliza reaches out her gloved hand toward him. Prince Will gracefully drops to one knee and presses a soft, formal kiss onto the back of her hand, performing his royal duty with mechanical precision. Stroking his dark hair like an obedient pet, Empress Eliza condescendingly praises him as a mocking tone, valuable boy. Prince Will keeps his head bowed, politely mentioning that he cannot remain away from the main banquet hall for too long without raising suspicion among the foreign guests. Host commentary. The psychological dynamic here is so creepy. She treats the second prince like a glorified puppet on a string, and he has to act completely obedient just to stay alive. Empress Eliza's charming demeanor instantly vanishes, her eyes turning cold and dark as she scoffs at the mention of the candidate princesses. She brutally insults Will to his face, reminding him that he is nothing more than a pathetic failure who lacks the divine sparks of royalty in his eyes. Prince Will remains entirely silent, enduring the harsh verbal abuse without flinching. Empress Eliza gently touches his chin with a mockingly sympathetic tone, whispers, fake apologizing for hurting his feelings, before slyly adding that his wretched misfortune isn't entirely his fault. A twisted, grotesque reflection of Empress Eliza flashes across the mirror panel as her grin stretches unnaturally wide. She cruelly taunts Will about his deceased mother, mocking her miserable death, before falsely promising that she will make sure to take extra good care of him. Clenching his gloved fist tightly against his chest, Prince Will lowers his head even further, whispering a quiet, hollow thank you to the woman who constantly torments him. Brushing her hair back with a light chuckle, Empress Eliza dismisses her cruel remarks, stating that she got sidetracked. She shifts the topic to the real reason for his visit, the ancient prophecy delivered by God Atra's oracle. Host commentary. Oh yes, classic toxic royal behavior. Violently insult a prince's dead mom and then immediately pivot to holy scriptures like nothing happened. Empress Eliza gazes sideways at the dark-haired prince, asking for his personal thoughts on the sacred prophecy. Prince Will keeps his eyes lowered, calmly asking her to clarify what she means. A ground heavenly illustration visualizes the holy scriptures, describing a brave emperor possessing glowing, fiery sparks within his eyes, destined to choose a holy maiden who will ascend as empress. Divine tapestry depicts the silhouette of the prospective emperor dancing with his chosen bride, foretelling an era that will bring 1,000 years of absolute peace and prosperity across the entire empire. Emerging back into reality, Empress Eliza sits surrounded by a thick, oppressive sea of dark red roses and sharp thorns, scoffing loudly, mocking tone, as she asks Will what he thinks of such utter nonsense. Her sharp purple iris shifts toward the young prince, scrutinizing his subtle reaction for any sign of betrayal or defiance. Knowing that a single wrong word could mean his execution, Prince Will maintains a humble, submissive stance, whispers, quietly stating that he is uneducated and unworthy of evaluating divine prophecies. Lifting his gaze slightly, Prince Will strategically flatters the Empress, stating that following the sacred Atria scriptures and hosting the candidate selection ceremony was a brilliant and wonderful decision on her part. The flattery works like a charm as Empress Eliza throws her arms out and bursts into delighted, melodic laughter. She praises herself enthusiastically, gushing over how wonderfully noble and admirable she is for hosting the event despite her reservations. Host commentary, Will played her like a fiddle. All it takes to tame this crazy Empress is a massive dose of shameless flattery. Prince Will bows his head again, quietly confirming her exaggerated self-praise with a soft, compliant response. Suddenly, Empress Eliza's smile sharpens into a deadly point as she utters the word, "less majesty" once again. Prince Will's eyes widen in faint surprise, sensing a dangerous shift in the atmosphere. Leaning back against her sofa cushions, Empress Eliza casually mentions that treason has been running rampant in the palace lately, proudly bragging about how she just sent 2 servants directly to the executioner's block. Resting her chin on her hand with a deceptive, sweet grin, Empress Eliza asks Prince Will if he would be so kind as to personally clean up after the executed staff. Without hesitation, Prince Will drops down onto one knee and bows his head low, accepting her gruesome command without expressing a single shred of protest. Empress Eliza gestures approvingly toward his kneeling figure, remarking that she wishes the rest of the empire possessed his absolute obedience. She darkens her tone again, reiterating her intense hatred for anyone who dares commit treason against her rule. Leaning forward with a sinister glare, Empress Eliza explicitly commands Will to eliminate any strange, rebellious candidate princesses who dare defy her authority during the selection process. Prince Will stares blankly ahead as the heavy weight of her assassin mandate sinks in. Host commentary, she literally just hired second Prince Will to be her personal court hitman and target any princess who gets too popular. This selection ceremony is turning into a battle royale. While Prince Will quietly confirms his obedience with a final bow, the scene transitions back to the bustling palace, where Princess Rita stands completely unaware of the deadly plot brewing behind closed doors. Inside the magnificent sunlit reception hall, noble guests and candidate princesses mingle gracefully near lavish buffet tables, enjoying the lively social atmosphere. Wearing her elegant green dress, Rita wanders near the marble pillars, letting out a soft, tired sigh as she observes the grand celebration unfolding around her. Looking out at the happy crowd, Rita's face lights up with a genuine, sweet smile, feeling deeply satisfied that her group conversation idea successfully saved the banquet from awkward chaos. She strolls toward the exit with a relaxed posture, thinking to herself that while every other girl is fighting for royal favor, she finally has the perfect excuse to slip away unnoticed. Sparkles and comical tears fill Chibi Rita's eyes as a giant, majestic horse imagery glows brightly behind her. She clutches her cheeks in pure desire, internally screaming that after spending the whole evening talking about riding tips, all she wants is to go visit her beloved horse Alec at the stables. Sneaking toward the heavy glass doors on tiptoes, Rita giggles quietly, assuming no one will notice if a low-ranked princess slips away for a few minutes. Suddenly, a deep, refined voice calls out her name right behind her, causing Chibi Rita to leap 2 feet into the air with a startled squeak. Host commentary. You can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the horse obsession out of the girl. Poor Rita got caught red-handed right at the exit door. Maid Noelle approaches Rita with an unyielding glare, asking her point-blank where on earth she thinks she's sneaking off to now. Leaning in uncomfortably close, Noelle looms over Rita, causing the young princess to panic wave her hands as she stammers out apologies without even knowing what she did wrong. High-angle shot shows Noelle standing like a strict school headmaster, asking Rita with a heavy sigh if she was actually planning on pulling off another shameless stunt. Noelle's icy blue eyes narrowed to sharp slits glaring straight into Rita's soul as if testing whether the princess possesses a single brain cell. Host commentary. Noelle's deadpan stare is so intense it could melt steel. She looks less like a personal maid and more like a hardened prison guard monitoring a flight risk inmate. Chibi Rita shrinks down under the pressure, big glossy golden eyes welling up with comical tears and sobbing as she crumbles before her terrifying maid. A flashback memory reveals the secret. Noelle explains that when she previously shadowed Rita to uncover her secret destination, she caught the princess happily playing with her beloved horse Alec at the stables. Rita lets out a defeatist sigh, realizing she was busted red-handed long ago. Noelle shakes her head in disbelief, bluntly questioning Rita's ultimate ambition and reminding her that she traveled to the royal capital to become the supreme empress, not a stable master. Launching into a relentless verbal lecture, Noelle lists every single expectation, scolding Rita for neglecting Prince Emilio while warning her that Allendale is a tiny kingdom that requires her to stand out among rival candidates. Ho's commentary. Noelle is given a full PowerPoint presentation on royal politics, while Rita is just mentally planning her next equestrian field trip. Meanwhile, dark-haired Prince Will strides quietly down the gilded corridor, his elegant navy uniform catching the light as he approaches the hallway. Catching the muffled voices echoing around the corner, Prince Will pauses in surprise, his sharp eyes locking onto the 2 women standing near the marble archway. Noelle crosses her arms, demanding to know what Rita is truly trying to achieve, completely oblivious to Prince Will lurking silently behind a marble pillar in the backdrop. Rita lowers her gaze, contemplating whether she should concoct a slick lie, but as her golden iris sparkles, she resolves to speak her absolute truth. This is the exact moment where most manhwa heroines make up an elaborate excuse, but Rita is way too honest for her own good. Brightening up with a cheerful, dazzling smile, Rita boldly declares that she has zero interest in becoming the Empress. The unexpected announcement sends shockwaves through Noelle's jaw and leaves Prince Will utterly speechless in his hiding spot. The unbelievable confession hangs heavy in the hallway air, gasp, leaving the audience breathless as the high-stakes royal selection takes a chaotic turn. Zooming in on Rita's resolute golden eyes, her gaze shines with unwavering clarity as she prepares to double down on her shocking declaration. Standing proudly amidst a blooming backdrop of golden flowers, Rita repeats her stance with total confidence, stating loud and clear that taking the throne is the last thing on her mind. Host commentary. Imagine spending millions on an imperial selection ceremony just for the top candidate to say, "No thanks, I'd rather ride my horse." Noelle's jaw practically hits the marble floor panicked, while Prince Will stares from behind the pillar with wide, unblinking eyes, completely unable to process such unprecedented royal blasphemy. Trying desperately to recover her composure, Noelle stammers out a warning, pleading with Rita to hush before someone overhears her treasonous words. Suddenly, a piercing, blood-curdling scream echoes violently throughout the adjacent grand hall. Everyone freezes as the high-pitched shriek ruptures the quiet conversation. Rita turns on her heel with a sharp dress swoosh, while Prince Will peeks out from his hiding spot to investigate the chaos. Host commentary. Excited! Finally! Right when the conversation got super awkward, a random banquet disaster arrived to save Rita from Noel's endless scolding. Abandoning her maid's stern warning, Rita dashes toward the double doors, leaving Noelle desperately calling out her name as she gives chase. Inside the main reception hall, young Prince Emilio stands frozen like a statue, a massive dark red wine stain completely drenching the front of his pristine white lace suit. A frantic noble candidate stammers out tearful apologies, crying, while surrounding aristocrats whisper behind their fans, condemning the clumsy girl for humiliating royalty. Overwhelmed by sheer panic, the clumsy young lady collapses onto her knees, sobbing hysterically into her hands as social ruin looms over her head. Spilling red wine on a prince in a manhwa is basically a social death sentence. This girl's nobility rank just dropped to -10 in 2 seconds flat. The entire room stares in horrified silence at the tragic scene. Prince Emilio standing soaked in wine, while the clumsy noblewoman weeps uncontrollably at his feet. A nearby blue-haired princess leans toward Rita, hurriedly explaining that the poor girl accidentally tripped and tossed her entire wine glass onto the young prince's chest. Observing Prince Emilio shivering in his wet clothes while the girl cries, Rita's golden eyes light up with sudden determination. Without a single moment of hesitation, Rita grabs the heavy velvet skirt of her green ball gown and aggressively hitches it up. The blue-haired candidate gasps in sheer disbelief, watching in horror as Rita casually unbuckles and removes her entire outer dress layer right in front of high society. Host commentary: did Rita just strip down in the middle of an imperial banquet? Talk about an absolute boss move that breaks every rule in the etiquette book. Watching from the entrance, Prince Will's eyes widen in genuine shock, completely baffled by Rita's outrageous public spectacle. Noelle stares in utter paralysis, while a red-haired princess shrieks out in horror, demanding to know what crazy stunt Rita is performing. Noble women across the hall clutch their pearl necklaces and cover their faces with gilded fans, scandalized by the low-ranked princess's reckless disregard for decorum. Moving with incredible grace, Rita wraps her lush green velvet cloak gently around Prince Emilio's soaked shoulders, shielding him from the cold and the harsh gazes of context. Emilio's eyes sparkle with reddish jewel tones as he gasps in amazement. Bending down to meet the young prince at eye level, Rita speaks with overwhelming warmth. Whisper, gently reassuring him that he'll catch a severe cold if he remains drenched in chill wine. Host commentary? Look at Emilio's face. That isn't just relief. That's the exact moment a future male lead falls irrevocably in love. Flashing a bright, angelic smile, Rita kindly asks him to bear with the heavy fabric for just a few moments while they fix the situation. Wrapped securely inside Rita's fragrant green mantle, Prince Emilio blushes furiously, stammering out a timid thank you as his heart pounds against his chest. A dramatic close-up highlights Emilio's glowing, jewel-like eyes sparkling with pure adoration, utterly entranced by the golden-haired angel standing before him. Turning toward the shocked banquet crowd, Rita raises her voice authoritatively, commanding the palace staff to immediately fetch clean towels and a fresh change of clothes for Prince Emilio. Maids scramble into action instantly, while Rita kneels beside the crying, clumsy girl, gently placing a hand on her shoulder and softly telling her that everything is going to be all right. Host commentary: Rita managed to save the prince's health, protect a panicked noble girl's dignity, and order the palace staff around in under 30 seconds. Absolute queen behavior. The weeping noblewoman stammers her profound gratitude through sobs, while Prince Emilio watches Rita's compassionate care with an expression of pure reverence. Sunlight filters through the high stained glass windows, illuminating Rita's gentle side profile as her golden hair glows like an ethereal aura. Prince Emilio remains completely spellbound, unable to tear his eyes away from the noble princess who just rescued him from utter humiliation. Observing the dramatic resolution from the shadows, Prince Will stands near the doorway with a thoughtful, contemplative gaze. Prince Will narrows his dark eyes, silently acknowledging Rita's absurd recklessness while marveling at how effortlessly she controlled the entire room. Host commentary: Prince Will was literally assigned by the evil Empress to assassinate popular princesses, but Rita is so captivating, he's probably questioning his entire life choices right now. Glancing across the hall at Prince Sovin, preening amidst his flock of adoring admirers, Will smirks slightly, realizing Rita doesn't care about royal clout at all. Night falls over the imperial capital as the grand palace towers glow sinisterly beneath a cold, starry sky. Deep within the private chambers, an elegant pink-haired consort sits before her vanity while a maid brushes her locks, listening intently as her shadowy informant reports that wine was spilled on her precious son Emilio. The maid adds that thanks to Princess Rita Alandal's swift intervention, Emilio was spared further embarrassment, causing the pink-haired noblewoman's expression to turn dangerously cold. Overwhelmed by explosive fury, the noble consort hurls her heavy golden hairbrush straight into the wall, screaming in outrage that her darling son was still publicly humiliated. With a grotesquely twisted expression and demonic glowing eyes, the psychotic mother vows vengeance, declaring that the insolent girl responsible for the wine spill must be cast into brutal exile immediately. Host commentary: what is it with mothers in this palace? First Empress Eliza, and now Emilio's mom is throwing a psycho rage fit over spilled juice. Next batch is going to be absolute war. Putting on a sweet, benevolent smile, the pink-haired consort clasps her hands, pretending that she's willing to overlook the embarrassing wine incident out of pure respect for Princess Rita's quick thinking. But the very next second, the warm lighting vanishes as her expression drops into a sinister, shadow-draped glare, whispers, coldly reminding herself that she's only granting temporary mercy to a pathetic country field mouse. Looking back toward Rita's glowing portrait, the scheming mother narrows her eyes, pondering whether this unassuming rural princess might actually possess some hidden strategic value for her political games. Host commentary: yes, the classic villain mindset. One minute she's throwing hairbrushes at walls, and the next she's trying to calculate if Rita's a pawn worth keeping on the chessboard. Morning sunlight bathes the grand imperial palace in a warm glow as Rita sleeps blissfully under her heavy duvet, completely unaware of the dark schemes brewing around her. Without a shred of pity, Noelle yanks the thick curtains wide open, flooding the bedroom with blinding light. Rita burrows under her covers, groaning in total agony as she begs for just 5 more minutes of sleep. Rubbing her blurry eyes with cute, messy hair, Rita sits up in bed and sleepy-headedly grins at her maid, offering a drowsy good morning greeting. Noelle strides into the bedchamber holding a fluffy towel, while a secondary maid follows closely behind with a steaming basin of water, urging Rita to wash up immediately because they have 0 time to waste. Yawning wide while still half asleep, Rita blinks in confusion, asking Noelle why she's rushing around like the castle is on fire when she doesn't even have anything scheduled. Host commentary: waking up a sleeping Manhwa protagonist on a free day should be classified as a royal crime. Let the poor girl rest. Suddenly, Rita's jaw drops and her eyes widen in utter amazement as an insanely massive bouquet of freshly cut pink flowers is thrust right into her face. Noelle presents the magnificent floral arrangement with a stoic posture, casually announcing that this extravagant present was sent directly from Prince Emilio himself to express his gratitude. Rita's face instantly turns pale with sheer horror, her mind breaking down in complete panic as cute chibi Emilio sparkles in the corner. If flowers weren't enough, 2 attendants wheel in a massive clothing rack overflowing with luxurious high-end gowns. Rita frantically waves her hands, screaming that she doesn't want or need an entire boutique in her bedroom. Raising a stern finger, Noelle interrupts her protest without missing a beat, Sirius informing her that she must pick a gown immediately because Prince Emilio has officially requested a private audience with her right now. Host commentary: excited? Prince Emilio went from getting saved from a wine stain to sending an entire wardrobe and requesting a private date in less than 12 hours. Talk about fast work. Inside the grand sunlit reception parlor beneath a sparkling crystal chandelier, Rita and Prince Emilio sit across from each other at a gilded tea table. Dressed in a gorgeous purple floral gown adorned with black ribbons, Rita sits stiffly while young Emilio beams at her with rosy cheeks and pure adoration. Looking down at the table, Rita's sweat drops intensify as she stares at a ridiculous mountain of gourmet treats, tartlets, layered cakes, cream rolls, and sweet pastries spanning the entire surface. She mentally panics, wondering how on earth a simple thank you turned into a royal feast. Host commentary: forget a normal cup of tea, Emilio basically raided the entire imperial bakery just to flex his appreciation. Sunlight streams through the floor-to-ceiling glass windows, setting a peaceful atmosphere as the 2 royals sit surrounded by luxury. Sitting upright in her fancy attire, Rita shifts nervously, flustered, embarrassed, completely unaccustomed to being catered to with such grand imperial hospitality. Prince Emilio gazes at her with bright, jewel-like red eyes, looking adorable as a halo of blooming roses frames his glowing expression. Sweat dripping down her cheek, trembling, Rita nervously stammers out a greeting, trying her best not to make things weird. Emilio leans forward with a bright smile, excited, warmly explaining that he ordered every single pastry on the menu specifically for her as a heartfelt thank you for saving him yesterday. Notice how Rita automatically thanks the servant? That little habit is about to blow Prince Emilio's mind. Emilio stops in his tracks and stares at Rita with an unblinking, curious gaze, bluntly telling her that she is a truly strange person. Pausing mid-sip with her teacup raised, Rita blinks her golden eyes in surprise, asking if he really thinks so. Emilio gestures enthusiastically, pointing out that not only did she recklessly rip her expensive ball gown in front of high society, but she didn't even hesitate. Rita sweat drops, giggles, sheepishly admitting it was just an impulsive choice on the spur of the moment. Emilio's eyes light up with curiosity as he brings up another weird habit, asking why on earth she just thanked the maid for serving tea. Rita's jaw hangs open in complete dumbfounded shock, utterly bewildered as to why saying thank you is considered bizarre. Emilio tilts his head back at her with the exact same clueless expression, completely genuine in his confusion. Realization finally hits Rita, and she softly giggles to herself, remembering that Emilio is a high-ranking imperial prince who has been treated like a god his entire life. Chibi Emilio pouts his cheeks, flustered, embarrassed, demanding to know what she's laughing at and what being an imperial prince has to do with anything. Host commentary. Imagine being so rich and spoiled that someone saying thank you to a server sounds like an alien language to you. Softening her expression, Rita speaks in a calm, gentle tone, preparing to explain how life works outside the imperial bubble. She paints a beautiful picture of her home kingdom, explaining that back in her country, royals treat their attendants and ladies-in-waiting just like family. Flashback memories show young Rita happily hanging bedsheets on laundry lines alongside maids, followed by a hilarious scene of an elderly maid furiously scolding Rita right next to her horse whenever she messed up. Emilio's jaw practically drops to his lap in total disbelief, stammering out if she's actually a real princess. Looking from above at the table spread, Rita chuckles softly, clarifying that being royalty doesn't make anyone superior, nor does it mean servants should be treated poorly just because of status. Rita beams a radiant, angelic smile and proudly declares that her close ladies-in-waiting back home feel like real sisters to her. Emilio stares at her in awestruck silence, completely mesmerized by a worldview he has never encountered in the cutthroat imperial palace. Rita nods her head gently, confirming her heartfelt words with complete sincerity. Closing her eyes with a sweet smile, Rita hums softly, whispers, admitting that despite the scoldings, she considers herself immensely blessed. Host commentary. Rita's wholesome energy is literally re-educating the entire imperial family, one conversation at a time. Suddenly, a vision of her beloved horse Alec galloping through open fields pops into her mind, making her realize she's getting super restless. Overcome by sudden emotional anguish, Rita grabs her head screaming, gasp! In total despair, realizing it's been over 24 hours since she last petted her horse. Violent red text declaring withdrawal symptoms flashes across the screen as Rita clutches her blushing cheeks in pure madness, weeping that she urgently needs to stroke Alec's mane and smell his warm, grassy horse scent. Slumped over the table while groaning in misery, Rita tries to hide her pathetic state as Emilio sits up in panic, asking if something terrible is wrong with her. Host commentary. Forget noble politics or romance. This girl is legitimately suffering from severe equestrian withdrawal symptoms. Someone get her a horse before she loses her mind. Trying to make sense of her sudden agony, Emilio gets a serious look, asking if she's suffering because she's worried about Princess Sarah's upcoming punishment. Rita instantly snaps out of her horse trance, blinking in total confusion as she asks who on earth Princess Sarah is. A vivid flashback pops up showing the clumsy, weeping noble girl who accidentally spilled the wine yesterday. Rita bolts upright in shock, panicked, gasping out in horror as she asks if that poor girl is actually going to be punished. Emilio lowers his gaze somberly, revealing that because the Empress's word is absolute law, severe consequences are inevitable. Emilio hesitantly explains that committing lèse majesty against royalty carries a punishment of total exile. Rita sweat drops, frantically panicked, pointing out that Emilio wasn't even heard, and fine print in her head desperately adds that the glass didn't even break. Emilio clutches his hands in his lap, stammering with deep guilt as he admits that even though he doesn't want her punished, royal traditions leave him powerless. Heavy silence falls over the tea room as both Rita and Emilio sit with closed eyes, fine print floating between them asking, "What should I do?" Gasp, leaving the fate of the clumsy princess hanging in the balance. Host commentary. Just when Rita thought she was enjoying a peaceful dessert date, a life-or-death rescue mission drops right onto her lap. Next batch is going to be absolute fire. Rita suddenly perks up with a bright idea, realizing raising her index finger as a brilliant solution pops into her mind to solve the prince's dilemma. Throwing her hands out with a joyful expression, she suggests that Emilio simply reduce Princess Sarah's punishment to a mild house arrest instead of full exile. Prince Emilio blinks in utter astonishment, completely shocked by such an unconventional proposal from a guest. Rita continues explaining with a radiant smile, pointing out that showing mercy will make the public view him as a generous and magnanimous future ruler. Placing a hand over her heart, serious, she warmly adds that she would much rather see a broad-minded leader sit upon the imperial throne. Host commentary. Talk about top-tier political strategy disguised as sweet advice. Rita is single-handedly shaping imperial policy before dessert is even finished. Emilio gazes at her in stunned silence, whispers, his ruby eyes shimmering with deep admiration for her unique perspective. He softly whispers under his breath, remarking to himself that Rita is truly an extraordinarily strange person. A bright smile spreads across Emilio's face, and he promises to speak with his mother, the Empress, on Sarah's behalf. Clasping her hands together in relief, Rita enthusiastically encourages him to follow through with the plan. Suddenly, Rita's expression shifts into a hilarious deadpan sweat drop. Realizing she has hit a major conversational dead end. Host commentary. Look at that classic Manhwa chibi face. She went from diplomatic genius to completely brain empty in 5 seconds flat. Observing the remaining pastries, Emilio speaks up from behind the decorative room divider, asking why she hasn't touched any of the gourmet treats. Rita fidgets awkwardly on her feet, stammering out excuses as Emilio gets surprisingly pouty, demanding to know if she has more important business than sitting with him. Tears welling in her golden eyes, Rita pitifully confesses that she desperately wants to go visit her beloved horse Alec. Emilio tilts his head back in complete confusion, baffled that she is choosing a literal horse over royal imperial hospitality. Host commentary. Prince Emilio brought out a whole 5-star buffet, and her heart still belongs to a horse. You can't make this stuff up. Stepping closer with soft roses blooming around them, Emilio reaches out and gently takes both of Rita's hands into his own. Blushing at the sudden physical contact, Rita gazes back at him, flustered, embarrassed, caught off guard by his sudden affection. Looking into her eyes with an earnest gaze, Emilio quietly waits for her to elaborate on her feelings. Cupping her hand beside her mouth, Chibi Rita leans down to whisper a top-secret confession right into his ear. She whispers that while it might sound improper, riding Alec across open green pastures is her absolute favorite thing in the entire world. Host commentary. That flashback visual of her galloping freely through the fields is gorgeous. The artist always delivers on outdoor lighting. Her tone turns slightly somber, Sais admitting she feared that becoming an empress would mean giving up her passion for horseback riding forever. Emilio breaks into a sweet, genuine giggle, thoroughly charmed by her honest and refreshingly simple worries. He imagines a future vision of them riding side by side, proudly stating that an empress who knows how to handle a horse would look incredible. Looking back at her with sparkling, starry eyes, Emilio reveals that he has one special request for her in return. Chibi Emilio excitedly announces that the Imperial Palace is hosting a grand hunting competition in the forest very soon. Host commentary. A royal hunting tournament arc right after a tea party? You just know some crazy drama is about to go down in those wilds. Hearing the word hunting, Rita's face lights up with sheer delight, instantly energized by the thought of outdoor action. She immediately begins rambling about her hunting adventures back home, completely missing the fact that Emilio's nervously trying to ask for something specific. Tightening his grip on her hands, Emilio steps closer and gathers his courage, flustered, embarrassed, to speak up. Rita blinks in mild confusion, tilting her head as she asks why on earth he wants her personal handkerchief. Emilio's eyes shine like dazzling diamonds, overflowing with pure joy at her willingness to give it to him. Cheering in triumph, Emilio clenches his fists, while Rita mentally promises to gift him as many handkerchiefs as his heart desires. Host commentary. A custom handkerchief in romance manhwas is basically a marriage proposal. Someone give this little prince his trophy. Standing by the wall, Maid Noelle releases a quiet, exasperated sigh, keeping her composure despite the absurd royal shenanigans. Later that night, Alec the horse twitches his ears, standing inside the dim wooden stable stall. Unable to resist any longer, Rita bursts into the stables, weeping tears of joy, throwing her arms around Alec's neck while crying out how much she missed him. Wrapped tightly in her hooded purple cloak, Rita falls fast asleep in the cozy bed of straw right next to her horse. Sensing an intruder, Alec glares suspiciously as the handsome navy uniformed Duke quietly steps into the barn, holding his hands up placatingly. Host commentary: the Duke stepped in like a SWAT officer trying to negotiate with a protective horse. That side eye from Alec is top-tier comedy. Kneeling beside the sleeping princess, Whispers he softly reasons with the grumpy horse so he can take her back inside before she catches a cold. Gentle moonlight streams through the stable as he scoops Rita into a delicate princess carry, lifting her off the ground without waking her. Morning light bathes the castle as Rita slowly opens her eyes, tired, stretching out under her heavy silk blankets while groggily wondering what happened. Rubbing her eyes in confusion, she stares at her bedroom ceiling, unable to process how she ended up back in her bed. Panic sets in as she assumes Maid Noelle found her sleeping in the straw and personally dragged her back to her room. Chibi Rita frantically scurries across the floor, panicked, trying to tidy up her messy nightgown and rehearse a dramatic apology before Noelle arrives. Host commentary: she's out here rehearsing formal apologies like she committed high treason, all because she took a nap in some hay. Loud, aggressive thumping rattles against her chamber door, catching her completely off guard. The door slams open, and Princess Sarah bursts into the room, sobbing hysterically, desperately begging Rita for help. Outside, bright sunlight shines down upon the towering white spires of the majestic imperial palace. Inside the lounge, Sarah sits on the velvet couch, weeping into a handkerchief, while Rita sits beside her, offering gentle comfort. Rita listens attentively with a grave expression, waiting for her distraught guest to explain the sudden breakdown. Dabbing her bloodshot eyes, Sarah sniffles softly, crying, apologizing through her tears for intruding so early in the morning. Rita smiles warmly, thanking Noelle for bringing warm herbal tea and gently offering a cup to her crying visitor. Taking a small sip of honey tea, Sarah stammers out a shaky thank you, who whispers, her trembling voice slowly calming down. Dropping a massive bombshell, Sarah reveals a dark scheme orchestrated by Princess Fauna from the previous night, sending Rita into total shock. Host commentary: just when we thought things were settling down, villainous Fauna makes a move behind the scenes. Next batch is going to be absolute fire. Cordelia gently sets down a porcelain vase filled with blooming pink blossoms onto her dresser table, carefully adjusting the arrangement under the soft sunlight. Gazing softly at the bouquet, Cordelia smiles to herself, whispers, thinking these blossoms look identical to the native flowers growing back in her home kingdom. She promises herself that she will change the freshwater daily so they stay vibrant as long as possible. Suddenly, a shadow falls over her room as pink-haired Princess Fauna strolls up behind her, accompanied by her usual condescending entourage of noble ladies. Flashing an arrogant smirk from behind her lace fan, Fauna mocks her outfit, remarking how astonishing it is that Cordelia is still wearing such an outdated, dreary dress. Cordelia shrinks back in intimidation, timidly greeting Princess Fauna with a nervous stutter. Host commentary: oh look, the resident mean girl made her dramatic entrance right on schedule. You just know whenever someone brings out a lace fan, maximum petty drama is about to follow. Hiding her sneering smile behind her decorative fan, Fauna lets out a soft chuckle while her followers giggle in unison. Cordelia nervously clutches her dress, panicked, her heart pounding as she desperately wishes Rita were nearby to rescue her from another round of cruel verbal attacks. Taking a deep, trembling breath, Cordelia tightly clenches her fists and resolves not to hide behind Rita this time. Mustering every ounce of courage, she bows politely, whispers, and announces that she will take her leave. She attempts to walk past the group, ducking her head down to avoid any further conflict as she makes a quiet retreat down the grand corridor. Glancing back with malicious green eyes, Fauna signals her lady-in-waiting, who is holding a massive vase filled with water and pink flowers right beside Cordelia's path. Host commentary: that side-eye from Fauna is pure villain behavior. You can practically see the evil plot scheme loading in her head. In a sudden, deliberate movement, the maid intentionally shoves forward with force. The heavy porcelain vase crashes to the floor, Cold water and pink flower petals shower everywhere as Cordelia screams out in horror, losing her footing and falling hard against the marble tiles. Soaked in filthy water and flower petals, Cordelia sprawls on the ground while the maid feigns a fake apology, insidiously snickering that since Cordelia's dress is already so dark, no one will even notice how filthy it got. Cordelia's eyes fill with hot, helpless tears at the blatant humiliation. Clenching her jaw in pain, Cordelia glares up at them through her tears, her tear-stained face filled with raw indignation and unexpressed anger. Host commentary: the absolute audacity of these noble bullies. Tripping someone and then mocking their dark dress takes mean girl behavior to a whole new level. Towering over her with supreme arrogance, Princess Fauna looks down with utter disgust. Warning Cordelia that giving her such an insolent glare is completely unacceptable for someone of her lowly rank. With a sharp snap of her fingers, Fauna summons her attendant guards to carry out her cruel punishment. Two maids instantly grab Cordelia by the arms, hauling her off her feet as Cordelia gasps in total shock, completely unable to break free from their grip. Dragging her toward a dark storage shed, Fauna cackles maliciously, declaring that nobody cares about a useless person like her anyway. Host commentary: imagine throwing someone into a dark storage shed just because they glared at you after you dumped water on them. Royalty in these manhwas really needs some anger management classes. Stepping closer with a sinister glow in her eyes, Fauna sneers wicked insults, whispers, telling Cordelia she can spend the entire night reflecting on her behavior inside a filthy barn because imperial hierarchy and ranking are absolute. Slowly shutting the heavy wooden door, Fauna offers one final condescending taunt, instructing Cordelia to remember her pathetic place as the 29th princess. Staring into the closing gap of light, Cordelia's eyes widen with sheer horror, sobbing and pleading for mercy as the heavy door slams shut. Pitch black darkness engulfs the shed as Cordelia throws her body against the sealed door, pounding against the thick wood while crying out for someone to let her out. Host commentary: poor Cordelia. She was just trying to stand up for herself for once and got locked in a dusty shed for the entire night. Hours pass in suffocating silence while Cordelia collapses into a heap on the dusty floorboards, weeping hysterically until dawn breaks, when a passing servant finally hears her weak cries and unlocks the door. Back in the present, Cordelia sits on the velvet couch in Rita's chamber, wiping her eyes as she confesses that Rita is the only trustworthy friend she can confide in about this horror. Rita listened with deep sympathy, shaken by the cruelty Cordelia endured. Tilting her head in thought, Rita turns toward her personal maid Noelle, questioning why Cordelia's assigned lady-in-waiting didn't step in to protect her princess during the attack. Standing with a stoic and impassive expression, Noelle calmly clarifies that by official palace protocol, ladies-in-waiting are strictly instructed only to cater to personal needs, never to intervene in social disputes. Host commentary: yes, palace rules. We can fetch your tea, but if another princess locks you in a barn, our hands are legally tied. Magnificent system they've got going on here. Rita blinks in total disbelief, amazed, asking for clarification if that really means maids are completely forbidden from stepping in when princesses are being actively bullied and tormented by higher ranks. Noel nods coldly, explaining that for a mere lady-in-waiting to mediate or interfere in conflicts between royal family members would be charged as an act of high treason. A chibi floating thought bubble of Rita pops up, tired, scratching her head in deep frustration as fine print text floats around her asking what on earth they should do to protect Cordelia when the system is so rigged against her. Suddenly, Rita's golden eyes light up with inspiration, slapping her hands together as a brilliant idea strikes her mind. Host commentary: whenever that light bulb goes off over Rita's head, you know someone is about to get absolute payback. Flash forward to the palace courtyard, where a delicate white handkerchief with lace borders is held out in Rita's hand. She reminds Prince Emilio that this is the promise handkerchief she agreed to give him. Flashing a bright, innocent smile, chibi Prince Emilio eagerly reminds her that she promised to award him this white handkerchief once he successfully hunts down the largest game in the upcoming royal competition. Bright sunlight illuminates the imperial hunting grounds, where noble ladies gather in elaborate gowns while young Emilio stands proudly in his royal hunting attire, admiring Rita's grand entry and her shocking choice of clothing. Rita steps onto the field looking like an absolute boss in sleek black riding trousers, tall boots, and a tailored white blouse. The red-haired noble lady shrieks in outrage, waving her fan violently while screaming that Rita looks completely unladylike. Rita calmly retorts that in her home kingdom of Allendale, women are fully permitted to wear trousers. Host commentary. Rita pulled up to an aristocratic royal hunt in fitted pants and completely broke the noble lady's fragile minds. Absolute queen behavior. The angry lady fumes with rage, shouting that this isn't some backwater countryside, while little Prince Emilio stares at Rita with sparkling, starry eyes, amazed, utterly mesmerized by her breathtaking outfit. Background noble ladies fan themselves with glowing blushes, quietly admiring how gorgeous and stylish Rita looks in her hunting pants. The villainous red-haired lady grinds her teeth in pure jealousy, flustered, embarrassed, grumbling in bitter defeat. Up on the high imperial balcony, the lavishly dressed Empress sits upon her golden throne. Peering down through her makeup, her eyes lock onto Rita as she coldly asks who that girl standing out so boldly is. Flanked by Duke Kalen and her royal guards, the Empress glares down from her flower-adorned pavilion, demanding to know the identity of the creature daring to overshadow her presence. Host commentary. Calling Rita that creature just because her outfit stole the spotlight? The Empress's insecurity level is off the charts right now. The blonde official bows respectfully, informing the Empress that the lady is Princess Rita Allendale, the bride candidate. The Empress's face darkens with a sinister aura as she realizes Rita is the one causing a stir and attempting to give Emilio a white handkerchief. Clenching her manicured fingers, the Empress's eyes glow with bloodthirsty crimson light, muttering to herself that a white handkerchief is a sacred romantic token, meaning I dedicate my heart to you. She angrily suspects Rita is trying to seduce her precious Emilio. Glaring down from her grand pavilion, the Empress whispers under her breath that she will personally remember the name Rita Allendale as Emilio walks onto the field below. Host commentary. Overprotective Empress Mother Mode has officially been activated. Rita didn't even mean anything romantic, but now she's on the royal hit list. Bowing low before the throne, Duke Kalen announces that all preparations for the Imperial Hunting Tournament are complete. The Empress breaks into a fake, radiant smile, declaring it is time to begin the hunt as Rita walks past in her trousers. Stepping boldly right in front of the royal pavilion, Rita raises her hand, loudly announcing her request to personally join the hunting party. With passion burning in her eyes, Rita projects her voice across the arena, demanding to enter the forest and hunt alongside the men. Shockwaves ripple through the crowd as noble ladies clutch their chests in horror, and the royal official turns pale with sweat dripping down his face, stammering uncontrollably at such an absurd request. Host commentary. The court official looks like he's about to have a full structural meltdown. A woman wanting to ride a horse and shoot game? Sacrilege! Up on her throne, the Empress gazes down with icy, emotionless purple eyes, radiating a terrifying, silent pressure that freezes the entire courtyard. Waving his arms around in a total panic, the court priest shrieks that her request is absolutely out of the question. He continues ranting that a lady joining the hunt is unheard of, while Rita lowers her head in disappointment. Suddenly, Duke Kalen steps forward and asks in a smooth voice why they shouldn't just let her ride. Stepping into the sunlight, Duke Kalen points out with a calm smile that Princess Rita famously rode into the Empire on her beloved steed Alec, proving her exceptional horsemanship. Rita turns in utter surprise, shocked by his sudden support. Looking directly at the Empress, the handsome Duke adds mischievously that watching a skilled princess participate in the tournament would make for a remarkably entertaining spectacle for everyone present. Hearing the Duke champion her cause, Rita's face instantly lights up with pure joy, her golden eyes sparkling with excitement as hope surges back into her heart. Host commentary? Duke Kalen coming in clutch with the ultimate assist. He basically told the whole court to stop being boring and let the girl ride. Joining in the enthusiasm, young Prince Emilio claps his hands with an adorable gasp, brightly agreeing that seeing Rita ride in the hunt would be an unforgettable performance, leaving the whole court eagerly awaiting the Empress's final verdict. Picking up right where we left off, the Empress offers a serene, almost angel-like smile, though underneath that glamorous facade, her sinister motives are already swirling. Sitting regally upon her golden throne, the Empress purrs softly, remarking that an uninvited challenger sounds like a delightful turn of events. Duke Kalen glares subtly, while the court priest breaks into a cold sweat, panicked, anxiously asking if Her Majesty is truly certain about granting such a wild exception. Tilting her head with a delicate touch to her lip, the Empress smoothly inquires whether the Holy Scriptures explicitly forbid a royal princess from joining the hunt. The terrified priest bows profusely, stammering that no such restriction exists, prompting her to declare the matter settled. A pitch-black shadowy aura engulfs the Empress as her eyes flash with crimson malice, chillingly whispering that she adores dynamic entertainment, especially when unpredictable prey walks right into her web. Host commentary: look at that terrifying dark aura blooming behind her. The Empress isn't just letting Rita hunt, she's setting up the ultimate royal trap. The first prince glares with cold blue eyes from above, while Duke Kalen stands in the shadows below, his face darkened with heavy foreboding as tension suffocates the entire courtyard. Hearing that her request has been officially granted, Rita's golden eyes light up with pure jubilation, placing her hand over her pounding heart as unbridled joy washes over her. Whispers ripple across the spectator stands as noble ladies flutter their silk fans in sheer shock, while the heavy hooves of Rita's brown steed Alex step forward onto the dirt path. Riding atop her loyal mount with her quiver of arrows strapped across her shoulder, Rita exudes absolute confidence, looking like an unstoppable warrior princess ready to conquer the arena. Host commentary: can we take a moment to appreciate Rita's horseback archery drip? She completely put every gown-wearing noble lady in that court to shame. A blue-haired noble lady clutches her hands in utter admiration, starry-eyed as she swoons over how incredibly cool Rita looks, while in the background, the villainous red-haired noble lady fumes in a comical red chibi rage. Across the crowd, a stunning dark-skinned noblewoman with golden attire crosses her arms with an intrigued smirk, while nearby high-ranking court ladies exchange hushed, calculating whispers. Completely losing her mind in jealousy, the red-haired lady's chibi head twirls with frustration, grumbling bitterly as her plans to embarrass Rita totally backfire. Taking a deep, soothing breath, Rita gently closes her eyes, centering her focus and calming her racing heart as she prepares to ride into the dangerous forest. Host commentary: Rita taking that deep breath right before the hunt is such a classic protagonist moment. You just know she's in absolute main character mode right now. Leaning over her horse's neck, Rita beams brightly, stroking Alex's dark mane as she warmly whispers to her trusted companion that it's time to show the entire empire what they can do. Alec proudly tosses his head, eyes sparkling with spirited energy, as if answering his master's call with complete trust. From a bird's-eye view, Rita sits tall on her horse at the center of the dusty arena ground, facing the Empress's elevated golden pavilion, while the rest of the royal hunting party gathers around. Opening her elaborate pink lace fan, the Empress purrs condescendingly, remarking with a fake, flattering voice on what an extraordinarily brave hunter they have gracing their presence today. Host commentary: what a wonderful hunter! Sure, Empress, keep up the sweet act. We all know you're plotting something devious behind that fancy lace fan. Lowering her bow slightly, Rita responds with unwavering politeness, expressing her heartfelt gratitude for the Empress's unexpected generosity. Surrounding herself with a veil of blooming red roses, the Empress tilts her fan higher, whispers, smoothly noting that while generosity is fine, Rita must surely be thoroughly confident in her hunting abilities. Her crimson-tinted eyes narrow into razor-sharp slits over the rim of her fan, dropping her sweet facade as she coldly warns that she has zero tolerance for boring performances. Unfazed by the terrifying threat, Rita lets out a cheery laugh, confidently patting her chest while reassuring her Imperial Majesty that her hunting skills are second to none. Host commentary: Rita's sheer cheerful optimism in front of a bloodthirsty Empress is both hilarious and terrifying. She literally laughed in the face of danger. Waving her fan merrily, the Empress giggles with wicked amusement, declaring that since Rita is so capable, she won't even need a royal guard escort, instructing her to bring back some prime animal fur as a gift. Rita's golden eye flashes with fierce determination, shouting with pride that the Empress can leave the hunt entirely in her hands. Suddenly, a heavy shadow falls over the Empress's face as her voice drops an octave, cryptically humming that while a fur coat is nice, she wants something far more exciting to happen inside the woods. Standing beside the throne, Duke Kalen's eyes widen with sudden alarm, sensing the subtle, dangerous shift in the Empress's tone. Host commentary: Duke Kalen caught that villainous subtext instantly. He knows sending Rita out into the forest completely unescorted is a massive trap. Before the court can process the tension, Rita dynamically raises her index finger toward the sky, boldly announcing that if she successfully returns with the largest game in the entire tournament, she has one major request for everyone present. A dramatic silence sweeps over the arena as Rita projects her voice toward the imperial throne, leaving the entire audience holding their breath in suspense. Clapping her hands together merrily, the Empress chuckles behind her fan, exclaiming with bright curiosity that she simply cannot wait to hear what grand statement Rita plans to make. Golden rose petals float across the air as the Empress officially grants her permission, eager to see how this ambitious wager unfolds. Host commentary. Wait, what is Rita actually planning to ask for if she wins? Is she going to expose Fauna's bully squad right in front of the whole court? Duke Kalen gazes at Rita with a mix of deep concern and intrigue, while the blonde first prince stands stoically beside him, his gaze unreadable. Lush white apple blossoms bloom against the vibrant blue sky, signaling the official arrival of the Imperial Tournament's opening moment. Fresh green rosebuds glisten in the morning sunlight as the royal announcer's loud voice echoes across the field, proclaiming the commencement of the opening ceremony. Standing at the altar with his holy scriptures raised high, the court priest instructs all participants to make their sacred oath to the deity Atra, while the hunters on horseback bow their heads in solemn reverence. Closing her eyes with laser-focused resolve, Rita tightens her grip on the reins, preparing herself for the wild sprint ahead as the final horn sounds, officially opening the hunt. Spearheading the charge, Duke Kalen digs his boots into his majestic black charger, galloping furiously into the dense tree line. Host commentary, and they're off. The Duke launched into that forest like a cannonball. Riding up alongside Rita's horse, young Prince Emilio turns around with an adorable grin, excited, cheering for her to do her best, while Rita laughs back, promising not to go easy on him. Pointing his gloved finger with sparkled enthusiasm, little Emilio reminds her never to forget the special handkerchief promise they made earlier. Rita smiles softly with closed eyes, feeling touched by the young prince's innocent warmth amidst all the court intrigue. Flanked by two heavily armed guards, Prince Emilio gallops ahead into the sun-dappled woodland trail, leaving Rita behind to take her own path. Host commentary. At least Emilio got a full military escort. Meanwhile, Rita is out here playing solo survival mode thanks to the Empress's generosity. Suddenly, a gleaming white horse pulls up right next to Rita. Gasp, and she turns her head in surprise to see the handsome blonde first prince riding alongside her. Rita's eyes widen in total shock, caught off guard by the sudden, overwhelming presence of the imperial prince. Sunlight filters through the canopy, illuminating the blonde prince's striking blue eyes as he offers her a smooth, breathtakingly gentle smile. Leaning over from his saddle with captivating grace, the prince tenderly cradles Rita's gloved hand and presses a soft, romantic kiss onto her knuckles. Rita freezes in complete disbelief, her mind short-circuiting at the unexpected royal gesture. Host commentary. Whoa, hold on. Did the first prince just pull up mid-gallop and drop a full fairy tale hand kiss on her? The romance plot twist is hitting at 100 miles per hour. Flushing bright crimson, flustered, embarrassed, Rita stammers incoherently as the prince gazes into her eyes with intense affection, framed by the dreamy green leaves of the forest. Locking his gaze onto hers with magnetic intensity, the prince lingers close, radiating an undeniable charm that leaves Rita completely breathless. As the prince rides ahead deeper into the woods, a jealous, high-ranking noblewoman in a green gown stands hidden near the path, clutching her lace handkerchief so tightly her knuckles turn white, glaring with pure venom in her eyes. Host commentary. Look at that noble lady in the bushes gripping her handkerchief like she's trying to strangle it. Rita is collecting jealous enemies like trading cards today. High above the lush canopy, a wild bird soars freely across the crystal blue sky, reflecting the calm before the coming storm. Sunbeams filter through the dense leaves, painting golden patterns onto the peaceful forest trail as the sound of distant horse hooves fades away. Riding slowly through the quiet woods, Rita sits dazed atop Alec, her cheeks still burning as she mutters to herself, whispers that he truly looked like a prince straight out of a storybook. A swoon-worthy vision of the prince's romantic hand kiss flashes in her memory, surrounded by glowing white roses and sparkling light. Shaking her head frantically as a goofy, chibi thought bubble pops above her, flustered, embarrassed, Rita facepalms, internalizing the hilarious realization that of course he looked like a real prince, because he literally is one. Host commentary. Rita's brain finally reconnected to reality. Wait, why does he look like a prince? Oh, right, he is one. Absolute classic Rita moment. Whispering apologetic words to her brown stallion, Alec, Rita tries to soothe her companion as he snorts with comical irritation. She gently strokes his head, whispering, apologizing for all the madness while celebrating that they finally get to ride together through the grand imperial grounds. Resting her cheek against his soft brown neck, Rita beams, excited, praising Alec as an absolute genius and the best horse in the whole world. Alec lets out a satisfied snort, but in a split second, his ears twitch sharply toward the shadows as Rita's eyes widen in sudden alarm. Host commentary, Alec's equine senses are on 100 alert right now. You know, whenever a horse freezes like that in a fantasy manhwa, danger is literally 5 seconds away. Through the dappled forest leaves, sunlight glimmers off a pristine forest stream where a breathtaking golden deer drinks quietly from the water's edge. Sitting quietly atop her horse, Rita spots the majestic prey, her heart pounding with excitement as she realizes this could be her winning trophy. Reaching back with practiced swiftness, Rita draws a sleek arrow from her leather quiver and notches it onto her wooden bowstring. With laser focus, she pulls the bowstring back tight, holding her breath as she locks her eyes onto the prize. Before she can release her shot, a flock of wild birds abruptly erupts from the treetop canopy with loud, startled squawks. The sudden disturbance shatters the peaceful silence of the woodland path. Snorting in violent panic, Alec rears back on his hind legs, sending Rita jolting in her saddle as she shouts panic to keep her balance. The golden deer leaps into the thick brush as her arrow thuds uselessly into the dirt. Host commentary. Great timing, random forest birds. You just ruined what would have been the cleanest hunting shot of the tournament. Clinging tightly to the reins, panicked, Rita tries to calm her terrified mount while Alec shivers violently beneath her. Glancing around the dark shadows, Rita's skin turns pale, whispers, sensing a suffocating wave of deadly bloodlust radiating from the dense foliage. Heavy footfalls crash through the underbrush, leaving a dark, ominous trail along the dirt path as something dangerous closes in. Emerging dramatically from the shadows, Prince Will sits atop his majestic black warhorse, clad in his royal blue coat and dark cloak. Rita gasps in disbelief, wondering what on earth the stoic prince is doing out here in the deep woods. With a swift, lethal motion, Prince Will draws his heavy steel longsword, his eyes burning with intense combat focus as he raises his blade. Host commentary, look at Prince Will pulling up like an absolute dark knight. That sword draw visual is peak top-tier manhwa aura. Positioning his horse directly between Rita and the hidden threat, Prince Will holds his weapon high as Rita stammers in confusion, completely unaware of the lethal projectile whistling through the air right behind her. Narrowing his crimson eyes, Prince Will detects the murderous intent in the air, kicking his stallion into a fierce gallop as a lethal metal spear swooshes toward them. With lightning-fast reflexes, Prince Will swings his sword, slicing through 2 incoming projectiles in a single arc. Sweeping past her horse, he barks a sharp command, ordering Princess Rita to dive into the dense bushes immediately. Turning Alec on a dime, Rita shouts, galloping into the heavy foliage as fast as her horse can carry her. Behind her, Prince Will rides escort, keeping his weapon ready for the next strike. Galloping side by side down the sunlit dirt trail, Rita asks in sheer panic, what is attacking them? Prince Will glances at her grimly, warning that while he doesn't know who ordered it, she is undeniably the main target. Host commentary. Duke Kalen was 100% right earlier. The Empress definitely unleashed full-blown assassins into this forest to eliminate Rita. Locking his sharp gaze onto the trail ahead, Prince Will speaks with absolute gravity, telling Rita that regardless of who sent them, her only choice right now is to keep running for her life. Suddenly, another heavy iron spear rips through the air, zipping past Rita's ear with terrifying speed. Rita screams in horror, gasp, realizing just how close she came to getting impaled. Mid-gallop, Prince Will swerves his mount, deflecting another flying projectile with his steel blade as they race deeper into the dark forest. Dropping from the high branches like a shadow, a hooded assassin leaps down with a gleaming dagger drawn. Alec rears back in sheer terror as Rita screams, while the stealthy killer lands silently on the dirt path below. Host commentary. That assassin's tree drop was ridiculously smooth, but dropping right in front of a trained royal prince? Big mistake. Prince Will lunges forward on horseback, executing a powerful downward strike. The hooded assassin grunts with irritation, springing backward into a crouch with incredible agility to evade the lethal arc. Springing off the ground with supernatural speed, the masked attacker launches himself back toward Prince Will, weapons clashing in a blinding spark of metal. Looking back over his shoulder, Prince Will yells with intense urgency, commanding Rita to ride away as fast as possible and get to safety, while he holds off the dangerous killer. Rita digs her heels into Alec, panting, fleeing deeper into the dense woods. High above the canopy, dark gray storm clouds roll across the sky, blotting out the sun as heavy rain begins to pour down upon the wilderness. Heavy rain cascades down the rocky cliffside as Rita takes shelter inside a gloomy stone cave. Wrapping her arms tightly around Alec's neck, she softly thanks her loyal horse, asking gently if he sustained any injuries during their frantic escape. Running her hand over her head in frustration, Rita looks around the dimly lit cavern, realizing with a heavy heart that they are completely lost in the unfamiliar terrain and must hide out until the storm clears. Host commentary. Safe inside a cave from the rain, but stuck completely lost in enemy assassin territory? Talk about out of the frying pan and into the fire. Staring into the dark stone walls, a vivid mental image of Prince Will battling the lethal assassin flashes across Rita's mind. She clenches her hands, whispers, wondering why someone targeted her and whether the prince is still alive out there. A funny, chibi version of Rita pops up in her thoughts, shaking her head frantically while trying to erase the overwhelming guilt. Pressing her hands against her chest, she reminds herself that charging back out into the woods would only make her a burden to the prince. Stroking Alec's muzzle with tender care, Rita resolves to let her tired horse rest inside the dry shelter. She resolves to stay put until the downpour stops before trying to navigate her way back to the royal camp. Outside, the heavy rainfall continues to pound against the forest rocks. Suddenly, over the steady sound of falling water, Rita's ears catch the distinct, rhythmic crunch of heavy footsteps approaching the cave entrance. Standing in the pouring rain right outside the cave mouth, a tall, cloaked silhouette appears, shrouded in pure mystery and dark aura. Host commentary. Oh no, the assassin tracked her all the way to her hideout. This girl literally cannot get a single break today. Recognizing the dark cloak instantly, Rita draws her sidearm sword, her hands trembling with tension as she realizes her mortal enemy has tracked her down. She knows her basic swordsmanship is no match for a professional killer. Narrowing her golden eyes into a glare of pure resolve, Rita tightens her grip on the hilt. She refuses to cower or lie down and accept death without putting up a vicious fight. Standing her ground at the center of the cavern, Rita raises her sword pointed straight at the approaching figure, ready to strike down the intruder. Suddenly, her jaw drops in complete bewilderment. Her fierce combat stance instantly freezing as the intruder staggers forward. The hooded assassin collapses face first onto the damp cavern floor, wheezing heavily as dark blood gushes from a massive cut on his torso. Rita stares in shock, gasp, realizing the terrifying killer is fatally wounded. Host commentary. Well, that took an unexpected turn. She prepared for an epic duel to the death, and the villain just face-planted onto the floor, bleeding out. As a dark pool of crimson spreads across the stone ground, Rita stands frozen in hesitation. She reminds herself that the smartest move is to let him be and protect her own life after Prince Will sacrificed everything to help her escape. Unable to ignore someone dying right before her eyes, Rita lowers her sword and kneels beside the collapsed killer, whispers softly, proposing a temporary truce while gentle light surrounds her benevolent gesture. The assassin's hood slips backward, revealing messy silver hair, pale skin, and bloodshot crimson eyes. He gasps weakly as Rita leans over him, softly asking whispers if he will let her inspect his terrible wound. Looking down at him with immense compassion, Rita offers to perform first aid, her gentle yellow eyes radiating pure warmth despite knowing this man tried to end her life minutes ago. Clutching his torn cloak tightly over his chest, the silver-haired assassin recoils in utter shock, barking out wildly whether she is completely lost her mind. Host commentary. The assassin's brain is totally short-circuiting right now. Lady, I literally tried to stab you 5 minutes ago. Why are you offering me medical assistance? A tiny chibi Rita pops into view, stubbornly scolding him that an injury cannot be ignored no matter what. Glaring back with intense confusion, the assassin sputters that he came here specifically to murder her. Reaching into her leather saddlebag for a small glass medicine vial, Rita casually explains that in her homeland, strict honor dictates never ignoring an injured soul in need. Standing in the background, Alec the horse blows a heavy gust of air through his nostrils, closing his eyes in sheer disbelief at his mistress's outrageous kindness toward an assassin. Host commentary. Sarcastic. Even Alec the horse is over here rolling his eyes. Alec is like, Rita, please, he's a hitman, not a stray puppy. Ditching formalities, Chibi Rita forcibly pulls open his dark cloak, insisting they must disinfect the wound immediately. The assassin protests frantically, revealing a gruesome deep slash across his chest. Leaning closer, Rita's eyes widen in amazement, noticing the deep bloody flesh slowly knitting itself back together. The silver-haired youth turns his head away sullenly, revealing that his cursed body grants him immortality, so she should just leave him alone. Unfazed by his dark revelation, Rita reaches up and unties the elegant green silk ribbon wrapped around her blonde ponytail, letting her golden hair cascade loosely over her shoulders. Gently taking his bruised hand, Rita carefully wraps her soft green hair ribbon around his injured wrist as a makeshift bandage. She softly whispers that even if he is immortal, pain still hurts just the same. Looking directly into his stunned crimson eyes, Rita smiles with genuine warmth, declaring that because he feels pain, she simply refuses to abandon him in the cold. Frozen in complete disbelief, the silver-haired assassin stares at her in silence, a bright crimson flush spreading across his cheeks as his killer instincts completely melt away under her kindness. Host commentary. And just like that, she charmed the assassin. Rita is out here converting paid hitmen into loyal simps with pure wholesome energy. Outside the cave, the storm breaks and golden sunlight shines through the wet leaves. Sitting up with his chest neatly bandaged, the assassin points toward the exit, whispers, instructing Rita to head 100 meters west through the woods where she will safely find the prince. Stepping out into the crisp woods alongside Alec, Rita follows the exact direction the silver-haired assassin pointed out, relieved to finally leave that damp cavern behind. Meanwhile, resting against the stone wall with Rita's green ribbon neatly tied around his chest and wrist, the assassin smirks as he introduces himself as Luke, cheeky enough to remind her that their truce is strictly temporary. Host commentary. Did this man really drop his formal hitman identity and hand over his real name just because she wrapped her hair ribbon around him? Talk about falling hard for the target. As golden morning rays pierce through the thick canopy, Luke's voice lingers in the air, bidding a suave farewell to Princess Rita Allendor before vanishing completely into the shadowed woods. Suddenly, Prince Will comes charging through the brush on horseback. Jumping down in a single fluid motion, he wraps Rita in a fierce embrace, exhaling a desperate sigh of relief that she's unharmed. Standing together in the quiet glade, the prince holds her tightly against his chest, his heart hammering in his chest after fearing he had lost her to the Empress's deadly hitmen. Rita's face flushes a deep red from the sudden physical closeness, while Will whispers softly into her golden hair, repeating just how endlessly relieved he is to see her safe. Host commentary. Look at how tightly Will is locking his arms around her. You can tell he was 5 seconds away from burning down the entire forest if anything happened to her. Pulling back slightly, Rita blinks in total bewilderment, caught off guard by such an intense display of emotion from the usually icy royal prince. Glancing down at his ornate uniform, Rita's jaw drops as she notices heavy dark stains across his chest, crying out in panic that he's covered in blood. Will gently shakes his head, reassuring her that the blood belongs entirely to the assassins he slaughtered, eagerly inspecting her face to confirm she hasn't taken a single scratch. Examining her features up close, Will's sharp gaze narrows as he notices a missing detail, suspense asking with sudden gravity where her silk ponytail ribbon went. Host commentary. Wow, Prince Will has the hawk-eyed observation skills of a seasoned detective. He noticed a missing hair accessory right after surviving a squad of lethal assassins. Panic spikes through Rita as she stammers awkwardly, hurriedly inventing a cover story that it must have snagged on a tree branch during her wild ride, secretly hiding the fact that she used it as a bandage for his hitman. A gentle warmth softens Will's eyes as a subtle blush touches his cheeks, muttering softly, whispers that the silk ribbon looked wonderful on her, catching Rita completely by surprise. Realizing just how cheesy and overly romantic his line came out, Chibi Will covers his face in sheer mortification, begging her to immediately scrub that comment from her memory. Host commentary. The stoic prince is completely broken. He transformed into an embarrassed, blushing mess faster than a romance anime protagonist. Trying to break through the awkward romantic air, Rita suggests heading back to camp, but Will catches her wrist in a firm grip, halting her in her tracks with a serious look. Guiding her into a nearby sunlit clearing, Will points down toward a giant, majestic stag lying bound on the grass. Rita gasps in utter awe at the creature's colossal size and impressive antlers. Turning to her with absolute gravity, Will plainly announces that this legendary prize now belongs to her, leaving Rita staring back in total disbelief. Rita stammers back, gasp, reminding him that he captured the massive beast on his own, but Will stands firm, insisting that she claim the hunt as her own personal accomplishment. Host commentary, Prince Will is handing out high-ranking hunting trophies like free samples at the market. Talk about the ultimate flex move to protect your crush. Lowering his voice to a grave tone, Will explains that the ruthless Empress expects every noble attendee to bring back a grand catch, and returning empty-handed would make her an easy target for court intrigue. Clenching her hands tightly against her dress, Rita swallows hard, trembling, suddenly feeling the heavy political weight pressing around this hunting event. Will lets out a tired breath, questioning why she chose to participate in such a high-profile competition when staying under the radar was her safest path. Drooping her head with a guilty expression, Rita hesitates, whispers, unable to spell out the tangled mess of reasons that forced her into the public eye. Placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder, Will validates her noble intentions, while sternly warning her that her pure sense of justice will draw dangerous enemies in this corrupt palace. Host commentary, Will is dropping pure facts right here. In an imperial court full of viper nobles, being selfless without a political shield is basically an invitation for trouble. Will's stern warning instantly brings back a vivid memory in Rita's mind, recalling Prince Sovin kissing her hand in secret, offering the exact same grim warning that her kindness might shorten her life. Subdued by the grim realization, Rita softly mutters that Prince Sovin warned her about the exact same danger, leaving Will standing in quiet reflection as he watches her. Recalling her previous meetings with Empress Eliza, Rita remembers how the Empress appeared as a gentle, elegant, and generous noble lady over afternoon tea. A shadow creeps across Rita's thoughts as she wonders why both powerful princes are so deeply terrified of a woman who seemed so pleasant and accommodating to her requests. A sinister mental image of the Empress's cruel, hidden smile flashes across her mind, making Rita shudder in fear as she questions if a true monster lurks behind that graceful front. Host commentary, you know a villain is top tier when just her mental image gives the main character instant goosebumps. Look at that wicked aura radiating off her fan. Pushing aside her anxieties, Rita straightens her back and grips her bow, steeling her determination to navigate whatever political traps await her at court. Bringing her back to reality, Will reiterates his instruction, emphasizing that taking this grand trophy is non-negotiable for her safety. Pointing down at the magnificent stag resting on the grass, Will points out that bringing back a mediocre catch would still invite ridicule, making this prize her best shield. Looking at him with genuine concern, Rita asks curious what will happen to his own standing if he gives away his prized catch and returns to camp empty-handed. Nonchalantly brushing off her worries, Will assures her that his royal status is already concrete, urging her to accept the gift without hesitation. Staring up into his eyes, Rita's golden gaze sparkles with profound emotion, amazed, touched to her core by his selfless protection. Host commentary, Prince Will just racked up roughly 5 million romance points in one scene. Giving up his hunting victory just to elevate her status is peak hero behavior. Bright sunlight filters through the green leaves above as Rita bows her head, accepting the legendary stag with deep gratitude while swearing an oath to repay this huge debt in the future. Arriving back at the main camp, a massive commotion erupts as Rita steps forward. Nobles and servants gasp in complete shock as she presents the giant bound stag before the entire royal gathering. Whispering chatter spreads across the crowd of noblewomen like wildfire, while Empress Eliza sits atop her elevated velvet chair, watching Rita in deadly silence. While the princes look toward the royal stand with bated breath, Empress Eliza smirks slyly behind her lace fan, privately musing that this simple girl might actually possess a sharp hunting instinct after all. Unexpectedly bursting into loud theatrical laughter, the Empress openly praises Rita in front of the entire court, claiming how delighted she is to have misjudged her skills. Host commentary, oh, sure, misjudged. Look at the Empress laughing off her failed assassination plot like it was just a funny misunderstanding. Give this lady an Oscar for fake acting. Days pass after the intense hunting event, and the story transitions back to the magnificent capital city under a clear blue sky. Soaking in the sunlight, the grand white marble towers and gilded arches of the royal palace stand calm and pristine. A few days later, dressed in a sweeping blue gown, Rita walks through the palace corridors while maids drop in to respectful bows on both sides. Struck by the warm atmosphere, Rita notices that every maid and attendant is greeting her with genuine warmth and sweet smiles, amazed. Her face lights up with sheer happiness, completely unaccustomed to receiving such royal star treatment from the palace staff. Turning to her personal maid Noelle, Rita asks excitedly if she's dreaming. Noelle calmly confirms that her popularity among the ladies exploded after she brought back that mythical hunting beast. Host commentary: bringing a giant stag to a tea party society turns out to be the ultimate power move. Rita accidentally became the most respected alpha female in the entire palace. Giggling nervously in her chibi form, Rita happily takes the praise, though her inner conscience sweats knowing Prince Will did all the heavy work. Walking alongside Noelle, Rita brightly hopes her achievement encourages more noble women to take up horseback riding and hunting, but Noelle cuts her off with an icy tone. Noelle's expression hardens as her gaze turns sharp, serious, calling out Rita's title with an intense gravity that instantly freezes the mood. Surprised by the sudden mood shift, Rita stammers in confusion, but Noelle quietly informs her that they have arrived at the inner palace doors where the royal authorities await her. A lump forms in Rita's throat as she nods nervously, realizing that this unexpected royal summons carries heavy political consequences. The massive golden doors creak wide open, revealing the grand inner hall where Empress Eliza sits surrounded by all the royal princes, waiting in eerie silence for Rita to step inside. Host commentary: look at that entire villain assembly sitting in full formation. The hunt was just the warm-up, and now Rita is stepping straight into the lion's den. Stepping into the grand audience chamber, Rita feels the heavy, suffocating gaze of the entire royal court locking onto her as she bows respectfully before the elevated dais. Breaking the heavy silence, Empress Eliza suddenly claps her hands together, beaming with an overly sweet smile as she calls upon the entire court to applaud their brave, cute hero. Polite applause erupts throughout the room from the surrounding noblewomen, leaving Rita standing completely bewildered in the center of all the unexpected praise. Maintaining her perfect royal posture, Rita curtsies deeply before the sovereign. Host commentary: sarcastic. Empress Eliza is giving out standing ovations like a proud mom at a school recital, but underneath that glittering crown, we all know she's mentally recalculating her entire secret hitman budget. Watching the Empress maintain such effortless grace, Rita finds herself struggling to reconcile this radiant, gentle monarch with the terrifying figure from the dark rumors. Questions race through her mind, whispers, wondering who could have possibly deployed that lethal shadow assassin in the forest, and who was the true target meant to die. Gliding gracefully past the silent princess, the Empress casually remarks that the recent imperial hunt provided the most exquisite entertainment she's experienced in years. Close up on her smiling face behind her golden fan, Eliza praises Rita's hunting performance. Host commentary: personal hunter? That's basically court code for I want to keep my potential political enemies on a very short leash where I can watch their every breath. Maintaining her flawless composure, Rita bows her head with modest royal etiquette, expressing her deepest gratitude for the Empress's overwhelming praise. Realizing she was granted a formal reward for her hunting achievement, Rita decides not to overcomplicate matters and prepares to make a game-changing petition right here on the spot. Drawing a deep breath, projecting her voice across the silent hall, Rita asks boldly if the Empire can completely abolish the brutal noble ranking system. Empress Eliza narrows her eyes slightly behind her pleasant smile as she asks Rita for her reasoning. Host commentary: did she really just drop a political nuke in front of the entire court? Talk about turning a simple reward ceremony into a full-on societal revolution. Meanwhile, high above the capital as night falls, a suffocating silence hangs over the luxurious private quarters of the inner palace. Suddenly, a plush silk pillow comes flying through the dark air, bursting open into a cloud of white feathers upon impact. Stripped of her public facade panicked, the Empress clenches her fists in sheer rage, screaming at the top of her lungs while her terrified maids tremble violently in the dark corners. Turning away with an icy posture, she growls a low, menacing command for every single servant to clear the room immediately. Terrifying dark eyes flare up with bloodthirsty malice as Eliza demands if her servants have something wrong with their ears. Whoa, look at those demonic eyes. The sweet Empress persona completely dissolved, revealing the unhinged tyrant lurking underneath. Pointing a menacing finger, she coldly threatens to sever their useless ears, sending the maids dropping to the floor in desperate apologies before scrambling away. Lounging on her velvet sofa with a dark glass of wine, the Empress swirls the liquid while muttering Rita's name through clenched teeth. Her sinister purple eye glints with terrifying hatred, unable to stomach how a mere young noble girl completely threw off her meticulous political control. Yellow roses frame the lingering memory of Rita's bold request in court. Host commentary. Rita's innocent little question is literally giving the ultimate villain of the story a full-blown existential breakdown. You absolutely love to see it. Rewinding back to the exact moment in the audience hall, the entire court remains gasping, dead silent after Rita's bold proposal echoes off the high walls. Restraining her inner rage, curious, the Empress smoothly asks why Rita seeks to overturn a tradition that has governed the empire since ancient times. Leaning forward with a subtle smirk, Eliza warns that dismantling an ancient law requires a justification so strong that no one in the room can refute it. Standing beside the throne, young Prince Sovan stares with wide, trembling eyes, amazed, utterly stunned by Rita's sheer courage. Princes Will and Sovan exchange tense, anxious glances. Host commentary? Look at Prince Will's face right now. He's internally screaming because his crush just walked straight onto a political landmine and started tap dancing on it. Placing a hand over her heart, Rita explains calmly that ranking young women purely on national wealth and bloodline reduces human worth to financial standing. She argues passionately that individual character, unique talents, and personal abilities are completely ignored under such a shallow system. Dropping her head slightly, she highlights how this artificial hierarchy forces young noblewomen into endless cycles of harassment, cruelty, and oppression. Rita looks up with bright, determined eyes, asking to put an end to the ranking. Look at the dramatic contrast in the crowd. Half the noble ladies are tearing up like they just heard a legendary speech, while the mean girl is about to pop a blood vessel. Touched by her heartfelt speech, several lower-ranked noblewomen begin softly clapping, while the arrogant high nobles glare in bitter anger. Wave after wave of applause ripples across the room, forcing the Empress to sit in absolute silence as the room shifts in Rita's favor. Just as the applause reaches its peak, a tall, elegant figure extends a gloved hand to claim the floor. Stepping into the center aisle, Princess Charlotte requests permission from the Empress to voice her perspective on the matter. Empress Eliza welcomes her with an open fan, granting her permission. Wait a second. Princess Charlotte is the highest-ranked noble girl in the whole empire? Is she stepping up to crush Rita's dream or support it? Dressed in a breathtaking imperial gown, Princess Charlotte holds the undisputed first rank among all young ladies present, making her opinion carry immense weight. Turning toward the court, Charlotte plainly states her stance, disagreeing with the complete abolition of the established ranking framework. Pausing mid-sentence, she glances back at Rita with a solemn gaze, whispers, validating that the systemic bullying born from the ranking is indeed a grave issue. Her stern expression confirms that even the top-ranked noble cannot turn a blind eye to the toxic culture festering within the court lady society. Charlotte addresses the throne, questioning if an ancient tradition should be discarded so casually. Host commentary, Charlotte is playing master-level diplomacy here. She's acknowledging Rita's valid point while respecting the traditionalists, bridging the massive divide in the room. Standing together before the throne, the highest-ranked princess and the most outspoken newcomer present a surprisingly balanced dilemma to the imperial crown. Maintaining her gentle posture, Empress Eliza nods along, softly apologizing that such a monumental cultural decision exceeds her sole authority. Promising to consult the high priesthood before making a final judgment, the Empress dismisses the court, while Rita inwardly groans in frustration at the bureaucracy. Back in her private quarters at night, the dark atmospheric glow surrounds the Empress's malevolent grin. Host commentary, look at that terrifying dark panel shift. The Empress is literally fuming behind closed doors, screaming the exact same frustration as Rita. Pacing back and forth in her dimly lit quarters, Eliza ponders how to eliminate this pesky girl who continuously disrupts her plans. Emerging silently from the darkness, a hooded figure drops to one knee, awaiting his master's commands. Without warning, the Empress slams her sharp high heel down on his head, welcoming her hitman Luke with ruthless cruelty. Eliza looks down with an unhinged, predatory grin, questioning how he dares return after failing his mission. Host commentary, referring to Rita as a simple rabbit while her elite assassin got completely outplayed in the forest. Talk about supreme villain hubris. Gritting his teeth under her heel, Luke drops his submissive tone, coldly revealing that he intentionally spared Rita's life in the woods. Empress Eliza laughs mockingly, demanding a valid explanation for his betrayal, while Rita of memory looms beside her. Host commentary. Gasp. Oh man, Luke actually spared Rita because she patched up his injury earlier. Now he's standing up to the ultimate evil Empress. This story is getting crazy intense. Luke gritted his teeth, dropping that submissive tone as he pointed out that Princess Rita is far too useful to eliminate right now. He argued that killing her immediately would ruin their bigger game plan, like asking the Empress if she also had future schemes in mind. Empress Eliza maintained her sweet, innocent smile with closed eyes, whispering that she would accept his excuse for today. Dropping her friendly mask, Eliza warned from the shadow of the balcony that if Luke failed to manipulate Rita to their advantage, it would result in his execution. Luke immediately leaped out into the moonlight, soaring across the night sky as her threat echoed behind him. Landing quietly in the dark alley below, Luke adjusted his black hood with a sinister glint in his eye, muttering under his breath that he hoped he could live up to her bloody expectations. Host commentary, sarcastic. Luke is literally playing a high-stakes double agent game right under the most insane villain in the kingdom. One wrong move and he's total toast. The scene shifts back to the Imperial stables the next morning, where Rita holds a heavy wooden rake high in the air, shouting at the top of her lungs with pure joy. Young Prince Emilio stands beside her with a sweat drop on his forehead, completely overwhelmed by her massive explosion of energy. Screaming with excitement, Rita continues cheering about getting her wish fulfilled, while Emilio nervously fidgets with his fancy outfit. He reminds her that while he did grant her request as a reward for her hunting achievement, he still can't quite process her choice. Leaning over the wooden stall fence, Emilio stares at her with wide eyes, curious, asking if out of all the lavish treasures in the Empire, she truly wanted to clean horse stables? Standing inside the hay with Horse Alec, Rita turns with a beaming smile, declaring she wanted this more than anything else in the world. Watching her radiate genuine happiness, Emilio's cheeks flush with a faint pink blush as he smiles smoothly. He gently tells her that if cleaning stables makes her happy, then he's genuinely happy too. Host commentary. Look at Prince Emilio blushing like a tiny cinnamon roll. He thought she was going to ask for an imperial title, but she just wanted quality time with straw and horses. Gently stroking Alec's soft mane, Rita beams back at the young prince, complimenting how incredibly sweet and kind-hearted he is. Flustered by her sudden compliment, flustered embarrassment, Emilio stammers out that he isn't nearly as kind as she thinks. Rewinding back to their conversation right after the hunting competition, Emilio had approached Rita in the Grand Hall, admitting he couldn't beat her catch and offering to grant her any petition. Flustered by his sudden generosity, Rita's eyes went wide as she tried to politely decline before coming up with her stable request. Back in the warm sunlight of the stable, Rita snuggles up against Alec's neck with pure bliss, chuckles thanking Emilio for giving her such a wonderful change of pace. Emilio leans against the stall partition, softly asking if it's all right if he just stays there and watches her work. Pausing her pitchfork midair, Rita tilts her head curious, asking if he doesn't have important royal duties or official lessons to attend. She warns him that watching someone scoop hay isn't exactly thrilling entertainment, but Emilio quickly reassures her that his schedule is completely free today. Host commentary. Prince Emilio cleared his entire royal schedule just to stand in a smelly stable and watch his crush rake straw. Talk about supreme dedication. A soft shadow falls across Emilio's face as he gazes down thoughtfully, his bright eyes dimming slightly as if carrying a heavy burden behind his polite royal smile. As Alec quietly munches on fresh hay, an awkward silence settles between the two of them over the stable gate. Rita holds her rake tightly, realizing Emilio seems unusually quiet and lost in thought. Trying to break the tense silence, a chibi Rita brightens up with an idea, suddenly remembering the delicious deer meat from the hunting event and asking Emilio if he enjoyed the feast. Chibi Emilio nods in agreement, softly confirming that the venison Rita brought back from the forest was indeed prepared for the main imperial banquet. Host commentary. I love how Rita's thought process immediately jump cuts to food whenever the mood gets too serious. A true relatable protagonist. Panels shift to display a beautifully plated gourmet meal featuring tender venison steaks dripped in a rich berry reduction sauce, surrounded by fresh garden greens and savory spices. Resting her hands on the wooden rake handle, Rita admits with a thoughtful expression that she never expected they would actually get to eat an animal meant for ritual sacrifice. Placing a delicate hand over his heart, Emilio gazes toward the sky with a reverent expression. He explains that while the creature's soul departed to be with the gods, wasting its physical form would be wrong, as consuming the offering turns it into life-sustaining energy to continue the sacred cycle. Gently petting Alex's forehead, Rita's yellow eyes dim with deep emotional understanding. She acknowledges that simply existing means living on the sacrifices of other living beings. Host commentary: who knew a casual conversation in a horse barn would drop deep philosophical wisdom about the circle of life? The writing in this scene is surprisingly profound. Shaking off the heavy mood, Rita vigorously scoops a pile of fresh straw into the stall, shouting passionately that because of those sacrifices, they must eat heartily, stay healthy, and live life to the very fullest. Covering his mouth with a lace-trimmed sleeve, Emilio bursts into a sweet, bubbling chuckle. He softly agrees with her logic, telling Rita that any creature made into food would be glad knowing it nourished someone so vibrant and full of life. Reaching into her apron pocket, Rita pulls out a bright orange carrot with a playful grin, asking if Prince Emilio wants to feed Alec with her. Alec's eyes bulge out in pure horse excitement, while Emilio freezes in absolute shock, pointing a finger at himself. Unlatching the stable gate, Rita hands the juicy carrot over to the timid prince. She gently pets Alec's side to keep him calm, encouraging Emilio to step closer and offer the treat. With a loud, satisfying crunch, Alec eagerly takes the carrot right out of Emilio's trembling hand, munching away happily. Emilio's eyes sparkle with pure childish wonder, turning to Rita in disbelief as he exclaims that Alec actually ate the carrot straight from his hand. Rita smiles warmly, adding that Alec absolutely adores carrots and sweet honey treats. Host commentary: look at Prince Emilio celebrating like he just conquered a mythical dragon. It's just a horse eating a carrot, my guy. But hey, cute moment. Framed by soft, glowing pink blossoms, Rita beams down at him with an affectionate, radiant smile, completely charmed by his adorable innocence. Emilio throws his head back with a dazzling, uninhibited laugh, surrounded by a brilliant halo of roses and shimmering pearls as his royal guard facade completely melts away. Leaning comfortably against the wooden fence, Emilio asks how long Rita and Alec have been companions. Brushing down Alec's coat with long, steady strokes, Rita estimates they've been together for about 5 or 6 years. Flashback images ripple into view showing a wild young foal bucking wildly in the royal courtyard, causing panic among the terrified grooms as nobody could tame him. Rita narrates that Alec was originally a royal gift horse who was far too wild and mischievous for anyone to control. Emilio looks stunned, amazed, unable to believe that the gentle horse before him was once an untamable beast. The memory softens into a warm barn scene, showing a tiny young Rita huddled timidly in the straw, while the mischievous little foal cautiously stepped closer to inspect her. Rita chuckles softly, recalling how for some reason Alec refused to touch anyone else and chose only her. Host commentary: wait, so Rita literally bonded with a rogue horse when she was just a tiny kid? That explains why Alec is so fiercely loyal to her now. Looking up at Rita with pure admiration in his vibrant eyes, Emilio softly remarks that the two of them were clearly destined to meet. Gazing into the mirror frame of the past, Rita whispers back that perhaps they really were meant for each other. A breathtaking illustration shows Rita riding Alec at full speed through open green fields, her hair flying in the wind as she declares that Alec has always been her best friend, her partner in crime, and like a big brother to her. Gazing up at Rita's glowing, energetic posture, Emilio's lips part slightly as he mutters a faint word under his breath. Turning her attention back to the young prince, Rita lowers her brush and asks out of genuine curiosity about his own family dynamics in the imperial palace. A shadowy family portrait appears behind Emilio, depicting his older brother standing distant and cold, while Empress Eliza smiles elegantly in the foreground. Emilio murmurs that while he isn't close with his brothers, he loves his mother deeply because she is always graceful and kind. The light fades into a cold blue tint, showing Emilio standing alone under a giant imperial crest, while a dark shadow of the Empress looming below hides her eyes in sinister mystery. Emilio admits softly that sometimes he feels like his mother isn't actually looking at him at all. Host commentary: wow, that dark visual contrast hit hard. Poor Emilio is living in a toxic illusion, completely unaware that his beloved mother is a ruthless tyrant. Emilio lowers his head as a heavy silence falls over him, sadly his shoulders slumping under the weight of his loneliness. Sensing his hidden pain, Rita gently reaches out her hand. Stepping out of the stall, Rita pulls the lonely young prince into a tight, warm embrace. Golden light bursts across the scene as Emilio freezes in absolute shock, his red eyes wide with surprise. Close up on Emilio's face, buried against her shoulder, his cheeks burning red hot while a nervous bead of sweat drips down his temple, flustered, embarrassed. Holding him gently against her chest, Rita rests her cheek on his pink hair, offering unconditional comfort. Internally panicking, Emilio's mind races, panicked, wondering if hugging a prince like this counts as high treason against the crown. Feeling the genuine warmth of her hug, the tension melts away from Emilio's small body. Tears overflow from his eyes, clinging tightly to her clothes as he experiences real, selfless comfort for the first time in his life. Host commentary. I'm not crying, you're crying. Rita just gave this neglected prince the motherly hug he's needed his entire life. This scene is pure gold. As the evening sun sets over the forest, painting the sky in golden hues, Emilio steps back with a polite bow, apologizing that he must return to his quarters in the palace. Rita smiles warmly, thanking him for spending the entire afternoon with her. Leaning closer to Rita with a secretive gesture, Emilio whispers softly that he wishes he could stay longer, but he is required to receive a special spell twice a day, every morning and evening. Rita tilts her head in utter confusion. Emilio explains that if he isn't back in his room on time for the spell, his mother will be furious and scold him severely. Rita stands completely frozen, her eyes widening in deep concern. Waving goodbye with a cheerful smile, Emilio bounds out of the sunlit stable doors. Left alone in the quiet barn, Rita stares at her raised hand, wondering what kind of suspicious spell a prince of Gaushir could possibly be receiving every single day. Host commentary. Hold up. A spell twice a day? Is the Empress literally mind-controlling her own son with dark magic? That is beyond twisted. The golden sunset vanishes as night falls over the capital, casting deep blue shadows and a full glowing moon over the towering spires of the imperial palace. Inside her luxurious private bedchamber, Rita sits at her vanity table in a white nightgown, gently brushing her long blonde hair with a satisfied smile. She hums happily to herself, feeling content about spending the day caring for Alec. Suddenly, a cold blast of wind bursts through the balcony, causing the heavy white curtains to fly open with a violent swoosh. Rita drops her brush, spinning around in utter shock with wide, terrified eyes. A mysterious, dark-cloaked figure pulls back the sheer curtains, revealing a familiar silver-haired boy smiling mischievously under his hood as he casually greets her with a smug, "Yo." Cold night air surges into the bedchamber, sending the delicate white drapery billowing wildly into the darkness. Rita drops her hairbrush onto the vanity table, spinning around in pure horror as her glowing golden eyes lock onto the uninvited guest. Stepping gracefully across the moonlit floorboards, the cloaked intruder tilts his head and softly asks if she remembers who he is. Gazing through the shadows at his smiling face, Rita's throat tightens as she stammers out the name of the assassin who tried to kill her before, Luke. Pulling his dark hood down to reveal his untamed silver locks, Luke offers a lighthearted grin, chuckling that he's glad she hasn't forgotten him. Panic surges through Rita's veins as she realizes the hallway outside is completely deserted at this late hour, praying someone will hear if she screams. Sensing her terror, Luke holds up both hands in retreat, reassuring her that he didn't sneak into her room to end her life. Luke pouts playfully with a goofy expression, begging her to just relax so they can talk peacefully. But Rita's mind is racing with dread, knowing full well that a top-tier assassin could silence her before she could even make a sound. Host commentary. Look at this assassin acting like a cute chibi character. Bro, you broke into a princess's bedroom at 2 a.m. Of course she's terrified. Clutching her hairbrush tightly against her chest, Rita takes a shaky breath, mentally chanting for herself to stay calm and keep her composure intact. Luke smirks affectionately, praising her like a well-behaved puppy as he reveals that he dropped by purely because he has business to conduct with her, mischievously. The moment Luke reaches behind his waist under his cloak, Rita's heart slams against her ribs, panicked, convinced he's pulling out a concealed dagger to execute her. Instead of a cold steel blade, a shimmering green silk ribbon gently settles over Rita's head, leaving her standing in utter bewildered silence. Looking into her eyes with a surprisingly soft gaze, Luke explains he came all this way just to return her ribbon and express his thanks for saving him back in the forest. A vivid memory flashes through Rita's mind of the moment she wrapped her own hair hair ribbon around his bleeding hand to mend his wounds. Lowering his eyes apologetically, Luke admits he tried his absolute best to scrub all the bloodstains out of the golden embroidery, hoping it wasn't an irreplaceable treasure to her. Rita cradles the clean fabric, softly murmuring that it isn't, but still feeling completely speechless. In her mind, Chibi Rita is completely losing her sanity. She can't wrap her head around the fact that a ruthless contract killer breached palace security just to hand back a piece of cloth. Host commentary. Imagine being an elite assassin whose side quest is returning laundered hair accessories. The dedication to customer service here is unmatched. Walking around the chamber with his hands on his hips, Luke casually remarks that her bedroom is surprisingly plain for a royal princess, mockingly adding that it actually suits her low status. Rita's jaw drops in disbelief at his audacity. He chuckles dryly, admitting it's still slightly fancier than his own humble family home, but mocking her for having the lowest rank among all imperial candidates. Chibi Rita fumes with fiery rage, clutching her ribbon tightly in her fists. Running his fingers along the rim of her sofa, Luke cocks his head and snickers, questioning whether the furniture design is supposed to be antique chic or just plain ancient. Unable to hold back her temper any longer, Rita shouts furiously at him, asking who gave him permission to break into her private quarters and insult her decor. Luke casually sinks back into the plush cushions, his tone dropping into a cool whisper as he asks if she genuinely wants to know why he came. Leaning forward with a shadowy grin, Luke points his index finger and reminds her that she hasn't asked the single most important question yet, the identity of his secretive employer. Rita's golden eyes shrink in realization, her breath hitching as the gravity of his words sinks in. Thoughts race through Rita's mind as she remembers the night of the hunting event when multiple armed assassins ambushed them in the dark woods, making her wonder if she was the sole target or if Prince Will was also marked for death. A haunting shadow of Empress Eliza looms over her memory, her cold gaze hiding behind an elegant facade as Rita suspects the royal court's darkest puppet master. Lounging comfortably across her sofa, Luke tilts his head with a sharp glance, noting that the possibilities are narrow enough for her to already have a prime suspect in mind. Curious? Holding her ground, Rita gazes into his eyes and softly asks if he risked his life breaking into the palace just to deliver a dire warning to her as well. Luke's lips curve into an intriguing smirk as he echoes her word, demanding that she answer his question first without dodging. Suddenly, Luke drops all his serious demeanor and flops flat onto her couch, stretching out his arms and giggling that the sofa's comfy, he's getting sleepy. Host commentary. This assassin went from top secret informant to couch potato in 0.2 seconds flat. He literally took make yourself at home way too seriously. Rita's eyes bulge out of her head in sheer disbelief, panicked, screaming internally as she realizes this dangerous intruder intends to sleep right inside her bedroom. Yawning widely, Luke murmurs that Princess Rita takes too much effort to say, so he'll just address her as Rita before drifting off. Chibi Rita throws a complete tantrum, screaming at him to wake up and leave as night settles over the glowing palace spires. Morning sunlight washes over the majestic imperial palace, where a thoroughly exhausted Rita sits at her vanity table, letting out a massive yawn while her head maid styles her blonde hair. Drooping her head with heavy eyelids, Rita sighs inwardly, completely drained from staying up all night guarding her room against a sleeping assassin. Realizing her maid is speaking, Rita snaps back to reality with an embarrassed apology. The maid sighs, placing down a cup of fresh tea as she announces that an official invitation has arrived for a gathering of imperial candidates. The maid explains that while Lady Charlotte Tellis is hosting the main event, a direct personal summons was uniquely sent to Rita from the striking and glamorous Lady LaVue Lott. Rita tilts her head in utter confusion, wondering why such a prominent figure would request her presence. Her maid adds that Lady LaVue's personal attendant is currently waiting right outside the door for an immediate reply. Stepping closer with a stern expression, the maid urges Rita to make a swift decision without stalling any further. The maid deadpans, pointing out that Rita clearly wasn't listening to a single word she said earlier. Rita taps her chin thoughtfully, remembering the dark-skinned beauty Princess LaVue and wondering what motives lie behind this surprise invitation. Host commentary. Lady LaVue's character design is absolutely stunning. The artist definitely poured extra love into her jewels and aesthetic. Standing attentively with her notepad, the maid waits in silent patience as Rita weighs her options carefully. Turning around with a radiant smile, Rita boldly accepts the invitation, prompting her maid to bow respectfully and deliver the message. Gazing at the neatly folded green ribbon resting on her vanity table, Rita tightens her resolve, declaring to herself that regardless of who hired Luke, she refuses to live in fear any longer. Clad in a breathtaking blue silk gown, Rita glides down the grand marble hallway alongside her loyal friend Cordy, eagerly asking for directions toward the courtyard venue. With a warm smile gracing her lips, Rita feels a surge of excitement about attending the high society gathering. Suddenly, Cordy freezes in her tracks, her face draining of all color as panic grips her eyes. Hanging her head low with a heavy, pained expression, Cordy avoids eye contact. Turning around with deep concern, Rita gently asks if she is feeling unwell or sick. Trembling slightly, Cordy murmurs a faint excuse, claiming she simply couldn't sleep well the night before. Host commentary: "Oh no, look at Cordy's face. That is not tiredness. That is the face of someone carrying a devastating secret or being blackmailed." Her lower lip quivers as she swallows her anxiety, softly uttering a faint agreement to reassure her mistress. As the senior maid calls for Rita to step into the courtyard, Rita bids Cordy a warm farewell, telling her to rest up. Standing alone in the dim corridor, Cordy's tears fall as she whispers a heart-wrenching apology to Rita. Sensing a chilling pulse of dread down her spine, Rita pauses at the threshold, turning her head back with wide, uneasy eyes.